Okay.
And we are live, everyone. I'm live with Nachiketa Fire, and we're going to be having a conversation tonight about the true nature
Okay.
of reality. How are you doing, Nach? And we
Doing
are
all
live,
right.
everyone. I'm live with
Good to
Nachiketa Fire,
finally have a
and we're
conversation.
going to be having
I'm
a
glad that
conversation
we are
tonight
able
about the
to
true
come to a
nature of
meeting today
reality. How are
and
you doing,
talk
Nach?
about what we need to talk about. But it took a little bit of time, right? So it is what it is. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So where do you like to start, Jason?
All right. There's seven basic things. You said that we have like 3 hours or so that we can go through all this kind of stuff.
Maybe
And
more. I mean, like I'm flexible. It's over at 8 o'clock at night over here, so I don't have work necessarily tomorrow, so we could probably go a little bit more. But go ahead.
yeah, we'll see how it goes. So there's seven
Yeah.
basic things that I want to get through.
Hmm.
And that is number one being the true nature of reality. So I want to get into a deep conversation of that with you. I want to talk about our common background that we have because, believe it or not, we both grew up in Rippon, and I sort of want to hear, your experience growing up there, right?
Yeah.
Another
So
thing,
yeah, go
another
ahead.
thing. So the 7 points. Let's just get them all out there, and then we'll go through with them and sort of tick them off. So I want to talk about VR. I want to be able to explain to you what we mean by VR and show you how we came to the coordinate system that we're using and all that kind of stuff,
Okay.
and answer any questions that you have regarding the VR. I want to talk to you about the flaws within the single pole projections and atomistic materiality. I would like to talk to you about the 2D and 3D projections of the coordinate system, and I'd like each of us to explain our positions on upward rising or stationary Earth, and then maybe talk last but not least about your position on the final experiment and all that kind of stuff. So, how does that
Yeah.
list of things sound for you?
That's fine. Let me just clarify some things. Yes, Q and Fee, they did call me a shill and they did call me a jackass. I am not. I'm not butthurt by it. If I was butthurt by it, I wouldn't be having this conversation. I think they have a position in regards to why they called me a quote unquote a shill and a jackass, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. But we just want to. Let me just speak for myself. I want to just hear everybody out, give everybody a chance to speak their mind, whether I agree with them or not. That's secondary to just giving them a platform to speak their mind. So that's my position. And as long as we're cordial with each other, I don't see why not have a conversation. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. So let's be chill in the chat as much as we possibly can, everybody. So let's just try to find a common ground. What say you, Jason?
Yeah, I agree. So, you've seen, or maybe you haven't, but I've done interviews with guys like Will Duffy. I've gone on Jaronism's show, and we obviously have very different positions on things, but we're still able to do it cordially, right? So I think that there's no reason for us to get upset with each other. We're just presenting like our positions on things, and we're going to try to back
Yeah.
them up as best as we can, right?
Absolutely. So let's start the conversation about Rippon as you have wanted to do. So let's just go right into it. So I will just tell you my experience. Again, I'm born in South Korea, was adopted to a family to Ripon, Wisconsin. My parents are originally from Rochester, New York, right? Upstate New York, Rochester by the Finger Lakes. And uh, my father did go to Yale. My grandfather went to Yale, so there's a lot of I don't know accusations about skull and bones and such. I don't think they belong to a secret society, as far as I know. They have never admitted that to me, anyways. They lived in Tennessee for about a year after he graduated teaching, and then he moved to Ripon. So basically, since my father was like 27 years old, he lived in Ripon. Wisconsin. So I was adopted when I was 10 years old, and my father, who was already a professor at Ripon College there, from 27, and he was 55 when I was adopted. So they we lived over by Thomas Street, right off of Lincoln. Lincoln is right there, and Barrow Park is near there. So it's probably on the other side of town than where you grew up. So that's the pretty much the gist of it.
Yeah, I was about as far north as you could go. Grew up in
Right.
a 1 acre lot on Eureka Street, so I actually had like field in the backyard, but we were still in the city.
Okay.
And so, what did you think of Ripon? What was that experience like for you?
Well, obviously, you can understand that there weren't too many East Asian kids like myself in Ripon. Would that be accurate to say?
Yeah, I was actually surprised that you were from Ripon. I didn't realize how. What class were you? What year did you graduate?
I graduated high school in '97.
Okay, so I'm 7 years ahead of you that way, and I guess we
Okay.
would have never been in the same school, so that's the reason why I wouldn't have recognized you. But maybe we
Yeah,
have some.
you were in
Maybe,
high school when I was in middle school, basically. You were like a senior when I was like a when I was in sixth grade or seventh grade in middle school, right?
yeah. So I do have a younger brother. He's 5 years behind me. He would have been class of '95. You might remember an Adam Laufenberg. He's not quite as tall as me. He's like 6'3", 6'4", in that
Hmm.
range. I'm trying to think
How
if
tall
there's
are
any.
you?
Almost 6'7".
Okay. Okay, that's pretty tall.
Yeah,
That's pretty tall. So, and you grew
yeah,
up as a Jehovah's Witness, right? I think you mentioned that before.
yeah. So that's sort of a interesting part of my story because it's super isolating because there was no other Jehovah's Witnesses in the whole Ripon area other than my brother, 5 years younger, and my parents were real strict, and I wasn't allowed to have friends that weren't Jehovah's Witnesses. So it really wasn't until I had a driver's license that I could get out and meet Jehovah's Witnesses, and have friends that were 30, 45 minutes away from me. So I was a bit of a loner being raised JW in Ripon and not being able to hang out and associate with people that weren't Jehovah's Witnesses. So
Yeah. Uh,
go ahead.
I had one friend in my grade who was a Jehovah's Witness, but I had forgotten his name. But I do remember maybe there were two kids. One kid's I do remember his name as being Tom. He was a kind of he went to jail for a little bit, but I do remember JWs in school. So yeah, there. I mean, I guess it's kind of like normal in Ripon to have Jehovah's Witnesses. Right?
Yeah, I mean they're all over the place. When I was there originally, there weren't kids. Now some did move in along the way, but
Okay.
not too many in my age range. But so the spiritual story, the spiritual path. Let's go ahead and hear your spiritual background coming from Korea, being raised in Ripon. What's your spiritual story like?
Well, the orphanage I was at was Christian. I don't know what kind of denomination. So, like, we had school from Monday to Saturday, and then Sunday we went to Sunday, church, Sunday school. I tried to escape as much as I possibly could. Once I came to America, my parents, I think they were. My dad's father started going to like a Unitarian church, but my father was never really into churches that much. So we never went to church, like I remember praying, at the dinner table when I first arrived, like as a family, but I instigated that and then they kind of followed through, but we stopped doing that because that's what I learned at the orphanage, right?
Hmm?
To pray and stuff like this. And then I would say my family was quite liberal, and they were agnostic, so they don't know if God exists or doesn't exist. So that's kind of the position. My mother like volunteered at the church, at different churches and stuff, but she didn't really attend. So that's kind of the upbringing. So I was like an atheist for a very long time. I would identify myself as an atheist throughout high school, university. And I think once I started to wake up to like, like starting like 911 and like really like trying to like that really broke my brain in terms of like, what I thought about this reality and started going into like this, questioning, what this place was about, going into the various conspiracies. I think over time, probably like in my late 20s, early 30s, I start to believe in spirituality and then get, more and more refined in terms of my belief in quote unquote God. And right now, I guess my position about in regards to God is that God exists. I'm not going to be able to like name God or define God. That's kind of the position. So like I follow this philosophy called like Advaita, which is non-duality. I do think that the all things is a projection of God. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm created being, and God is the creator. So I am like under God's command. That's the way I look at it. So that's kind of the way I am living my life at the moment.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up non-duality because that's literally the reason why I chose the name Awake Souls, right, back in 2012, because I was studying the pathway of non-duality. And so it was in late 2012 that I had the aha moment, and I could actually completely see through duality, the hoax, and I knew I was at the point where I could actually show somebody else how duality is a hoax and a psyop. And yeah, that's literally what got me to make my YouTube channel was was understanding duality as a hoax, right? So have you gotten to that realization?
Well, I'm not gonna claim that I have like came to that realization. It's just that I think we are privy to, experiences. I think the experiences that like that I have come to is like a gift, like I believe that I had a near-death experience. I have had some other types of experiences. And I think they were very like tremendous in terms of like just kind of being disconnected from the physical reality, and that there are layers to what we call reality, so that's kind of the way I would look at it. So um yes and no. It's hard to say because like I don't know what you have like, gone through. I know what I have gone through because of course I lived my life. And with that, I would just say that, not everything is just physically based, if that is understandable.
Yeah, I've never had any of those experiences myself, but there are people that I have trusted that have had those experiences that are very confident. So I had a good friend that he got electrocuted while he was on a boat dock where he just got stuck there and then fell. He was in the water, but still like frozen, couldn't move, and he drowned.
Hmm.
And he went out of the body, and he could see all around the whole area. And then the next thing you know, he was back in the body. So I do trust and believe that those experiences are real, and it sounds like you're taking advantage of it, where you're using it to understand that this life isn't all that there is, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we all are going to have our ticket out of here, so nobody's exempt from that, and it just is part of this reality. I'm not morbid about it. I'm not, like it doesn't depress me. It just, it's just everybody goes through that experience, so like you can just embrace it, understand that that is going to be a part of life, and I don't have any control over how that's going to happen per se, because I think that is under God's command. That's personally speaking. So all I can really do is just try my best every day and chip away at it, and and just try to learn as much as I can before I go. So that's kind of the position that I'm at the moment. You know.
Yeah. So non-duality. Ever heard of David Hawkins, Dr. David
No, I have
Hawkins?
not. No, I have
Okay.
not.
Who was? Do you have any major teachers that you used for following the path of non-duality?
I've read a couple books. I forgot. I've forgotten the names of the authors of those books. I'm not even sure if they are authors of that book, but more from the Vedic, you know, like tradition, right? They
Mm.
call it Advaita.
Mm.
So, you know, so they call it the Dvaita and Advaita philosophies. So, I would kind of but I didn't really have a teacher. I had a good friend that I told people about that when I was living in the Himalayas. I was very close to a Ukrainian guy who was a Vedic monk for like 10 years, and he and I used to engage in a lot of philosophical conversations. So I would consider him kind of a teacher for sure.
Yeah, that's good. That's fun. I've got nothing against it. It really, enlightenment is learning how to overcome the ego, right? You've gotten that far to see and understand that conquering the ego is what they call enlightenment. Would you agree?
Probably. I think I'm still quite egotistical. You know, my ego is still very much intact, maybe refined over the years, and I would never admit to the fact that I am egoless or anything like that. So ego is a part of my life, but how I choose to engage or disengage with people have been refined over the years. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, is there anything else you want to talk about commonality, ripping wise? Anything that interests you that way, or should we get into the truth about reality?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think it's kind of interesting that we are both from Ripon. I think that is a bit of a coincidence, you know, if you believe in that. And, you know, it's probably, I mean, Ripon's a small town. If anybody doesn't know how big, it's like 8,000 people living there. I'm sure it hasn't really grown. Maybe it has gotten even smaller.
I don't
There's
think
a
it.
lot
I
of
don't think it changes ever.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, I would like to go back because like I have a couple friends from high school. Like one guy, his name is Zach Wheaton. His younger sister Molly Wheaton married a guy named Andy. Oh gosh, I've forgotten his last name, but they are the owners of Roadhouse
Oh,
restaurant. You know.
that's that's the main staple on the strip, right?
Yep, yep, yep. So, I mean, like, you know, if Jason knows Ripon, I'm sure that he does. He probably knows Ripon better than I do. But, you know, the main strip, there are a lot of bars in Ripon, but the Roadhouse is like kind of like right in the corner, right next to the police station, and across from Roadhouse, there is the one theater where they played like one movie per week.
That
I don't know
that
if the
was
theater.
that was
Yeah, go ahead.
the original Marcus Cinema right there. The original.
Is it really? No
Yeah.
fucking way. Ripon is a very crazy place because it's the home of the Republican Party,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think the suffrage movement actually kind of began from Ripon as well, from if I remember correctly. Somebody was telling me one of the ladies, I've forgotten her name. She's one of the famous ones who really like started the suffrage movement, and I think she grew up, born and raised in Ripon until she moved somewhere else, though, too.
So, did you
Do you
get to
remember?
experience scooping the loop, or was that sort of over by the time you were driving?
No, that was still going on, you know, where people are honking and driving around the block and honking and stuff like that, you know. I did the skunk hollow. You know the skunk hollow?
Oh yeah, on the way
Oh
out to
yeah.
Green Lake.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. A couple of my friends in high school actually, they were driving like a Jeep or something, and they got air. And then when they landed, they drove into a ditch and got like they were flipping around in the air and crashed upside down into a tree and landed upside down. One of the kids died, and they were just a grade below me, and that was like a big ordeal in Wisconsin. And then you know they had to change the seatbelt laws and stuff like that. And one of my buddies that actually he ended up coming to Korea. His name is Mark Besh, and like accidentally met up at a bar, and we both say, "Hey, I'm from Wisconsin." And he's like, "I'm from Wisconsin too." And then, and where'd you grow up? I'm like, you know, Ripon, and he's like, "Fuck, I grew up in Ripon," you know. And it was just like crazy having that experience, like you know, back when I was living in Korea. It's just like, what, Mark? I know you. You know, we used to run cross country together, so. Yeah,
All right.
but yeah, it's really amazing. And you know about Ripon College there. My father taught
Mm.
at the economics department,
Yeah.
and yeah, so that's
I
about it,
used
I guess.
I used to play basketball with the college kids there.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
they had a good team. It was the Redskins back in the day,
yep.
right?
Yeah. Well, we're probably starting to lose some people with our rip and talk now, but
Yeah,
we can we can get into the truth about reality. How does that
let's do
sound?
that. Yeah, that sounds good. Ripon is just something a little bit special in our hearts since it's close to our our upbringing. But let's get to the nature of reality. So go ahead.
What do you think reality is, Notch?
Oh boy, this is a philosophical question. Like it's kind of like the Matrix thing, right? Like when Neo talks to Morpheus, what is reality, right? Is that what you can smell and taste, right? Like if your brain is in a vat, and then it's hooked up to like electrodes and stuff, and then it's giving you the sensations of this reality. How would you know the difference, type of thing? So, like I would define reality as things that can be experienced, observed, things that can be sensed, right? I think ideas and how it's perception is reality because we are also the filters of that reality, so-called reality, in through the filters of our consciousness, and then you know um, how we decode that information is a part of that reality as well. So that's kind of where I'm with how I would go about it. How about yourself, Jason? How would you define reality?
Well, you started out with the Matrix analogy, and that works for me because I've been saying that we're in a virtual reality and not in an allegorical way or anything like that, but quite literally in a virtual reality, and that
Okay.
so in a virtual reality, things aren't made out of atoms. What what do you think is the building block, the substance of matter?
I don't know, but before we go into it, okay, let me just ask you a question.
Yeah.
So when you say like, because like, when I think about the word virtual reality, I'm thinking of something like the holodeck, right, on Star Trek. Okay,
Not a
let's
bad
just say.
not a bad analogy.
Okay, but the holodeck, the way I would describe the holodeck is that there is the actual reality, right? Because of course, like when you go into a holodeck, you can go into another holodeck, you can go
Hmm.
into another holodeck, and you're confused about is this actual reality or not? And you have to go through all those layers to come back to the actual, Enterprise ship, and then you're like, okay, I'm back now, or whatever. So when you say virtual reality, does it mean that there is an actual reality out there that is not virtual?
Yeah, it would imply that for sure. That
Okay.
and a lot of people, as above so below, the way the Bible talks about it is Earth is patterned on something else, right?
Okay.
And so
Hmm.
a lot of people have called the people that believe the Earth is a virtual reality of sorts. They've called it like a ancient simulation, like a so the theories that come from the big guys from science, like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Elon Musk, these guys all say that Earth is most likely a virtual reality. You've probably heard them say that before.
Okay.
We don't take a lot of things for credit that they say because they also believe in space. They sort of like to
Right.
to mix the two up, but a lot of people have suggested that especially the way we've seen technology explode from the time that I first had a Super Nintendo at maybe like 11 or 12 years old or something like that. And then you see what games are like right now with the Unreal Engine and the newest systems. Like the graphics are starting to get to the point where it's starting to look real, like you're watching a movie and stuff like that. So why would you think that simulations, not the word simulation is bad. We really try to shy away from that because what people like to do is straw man it and suggest that we're saying that means it's not real. What we're saying is the virtual reality, just like Meta. So Facebook has changed their name to Meta, where they're in the focus of building a virtual world, right? Where people will be able to put on the headsets, go into a virtual space, and interact in a virtual reality. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like Sims or something like this, right? You can play a character, you can be an avatar, and then it's the Sims is more like reality. I guess like my point is this, like, like there again, this idea of like a simulation of a simulation of a simulation type of deal, and I'm not saying that's not possible, but I do wonder how one can come to a knowing when you are in the virtual reality, and then when you are at the actual reality, which is very much like a copy or very much like the virtual reality. So like how would one be able to distinguish one from the other? What is there, like a sign or a clue or some kind of information that would allow us to say, hey, this is reality and this is virtual reality?
Yeah, yeah. So that's a good question, and observable evidence is actually out there that proves that we're in a virtual reality, and so a lot of the things we'll get into. I'll do a screen share and go through. I have a video titled "Virtual Reality Explained," and we'll go through that and look at the graphics and stuff that I put into it, and we'll be able to use that to talk about things with. And so, with that, virtual reality explained. Let's see, how do I put this? What was your question again? I sort of lost track.
Yeah, so again, like the question is that if you say there is a virtual reality,
Gotcha.
yeah, it means that there must be a reality. So if you are in quote unquote reality, how would you be able to distinguish or know the difference between reality and virtual reality?
Yeah. So the high power zoom cameras that we have right now allow us to see things that we can't see with our eyes, just because we don't have that ability to magnify the way the camera does. And so when we're looking at the sun and we're seeing the sun, you can actually, with your own natural eyes, see situations where there are clouds behind the sun. When you have a
Hmm.
digital camera with a zoom to it, you can actually zoom in and see much closer in that narrowed field of view. And with that, you can be assured that there are things like clouds behind the sun. We've
Yeah.
got footage of airplanes that actually interact with the sun as they're flying through it, and we're not alone in this. Even guys like Q
Okay.
and Fee has published these things with seeing airplanes fly through the sun, and there's an obvious interaction taking place.
Okay.
So there's a
Yeah.
lot of these types of things that, as you put them together, you can tell that this is not something that would happen with a 93 million mile away sun, nor like a 3,000 mile high sun, right?
Can you repeat that again? The last sentence?
These are things that would not happen in a 93 million mile away sun, or with a
Right. Yes.
or a
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
3,000
Yeah.
3,000.
I understand.
Yeah, clouds don't go up to like 3,000 miles high.
No, they do not. No.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a list of things. The eclipse shadows. Have you ever heard of total solar eclipse shadows before?
No, I have not.
Okay, so it's a situation where when you see a total solar eclipse, you have these positive light shadows, where instead of a shadow being dark, the shadow itself is light, and that's an inversion of
Oh,
what
wow. Okay.
light normally does, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's wild. I have never seen that myself, but if that is true, then that's completely crazy. So, like, I guess the point of contention for me, right, Jason, the point of contention is that I am living and I'm sitting on a chair. There's a desk in front of me. I can feel everything, and I understand, the concept of like everything is just senses, and it's like electrical stuff that's going to my brain, but I am perceiving that as reality. Now I understand, like, optically speaking, that there are stars and the sun and the moon, I don't think anybody has ever gone to the moon, personally speaking, and then I don't think it's someplace that anybody can go to. But how the celestial actually is working is a bit of a mystery to me. Okay, so I don't doubt that there is this video that you're talking about this airplane going through the sun or something like that that is seen, and there's some kind of interaction. Now, if I was a passenger in that airplane, obviously I'm not going to perceive that I am like entering the sun. Something else is happening from their perspective of things, right? So
Absolutely.
in and in essence, like, we are all kind of experiencing what we call quote unquote reality collectively, just like I am speaking to you, and then you're speaking to this microphone, I am speaking to this microphone, and we have some, I don't know, communication and understanding of what we're actually talking about. But yes, I think there is a kind of a degree that we have to accept that, like, this is all not really as tangible as we imagine it to be. It just appears to be a tangible, right? But I would kind of separate the idea of like the thing, the desk and the chair that I'm actually physically touching and such, to the phenomenon that is actually happening up in the sky right at the moment. That's kind of like the way I would, start off. So I wouldn't say that that is virtual myself. It's a part of reality, how it's working in terms of my perception of how I am decoding it, and then your perception sitting from where you are looking at the same sun, and we're apparent, we have the understanding that we're looking at the same sun, but actually we're having different experiences of that, right?
Yeah, we've got some fun footage that we can go through of that.
Okay.
We've put together a compilation of some of that footage that you can check out. It's it's fun things to contemplate, and the thing is it's coming from a whole bunch of sources all around the world. Everybody that's using high zoom cameras is coming up with this kind of footage, and even guys like Q and Fee have put it out there as well. So it's not doctored footage; it's real stuff to contemplate. There's a lot of tools that can be applied. We can put filters to it to test and see. Emboss filter will tell you the depth of field in a picture. What's in front of something else will pop with an emboss filter. So that's some fun stuff. So I guess back onto this question of what things are made of. Do you have any sort of position on what materiality is? You mentioned we have the five senses and electrical input and stuff like that, but the things that you think are solid, are they made up of infinitely small spinning balls that are full of empty space?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't believe that atoms exist myself, but I don't know what is like the building blocks per se. Like, I kind of think of things as a kind of, I don't know, electrical maybe, or some kind of frequency. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure about this, like, atom and the nucleus and electrons spinning around. Um, yeah, I mean, like, I've seen some what quote unquote photographs of these like atoms, and then they're all packed in together, as whatever. And then of course they given us, like, this model of a nucleus and electrons, but they given us models of viruses and such. So
Mm.
they gave us models of all kinds of stuff, and I wouldn't be surprised that if actually it doesn't exist at all. So, but
Yeah,
yeah, tell me what you think
if
about it.
if you do a little bit of research on atomism, it goes back to the ancient Greeks. And when they were coming up with the concept of atoms as matter, they were actually arguing about empty space. That's what the whole argument was about: is emptiness, space, vacuums. So the people that originally came up with the atoms are the ones that went on to create geocentrism and heliocentrism. And it actually goes back to Kabbalah. Are you familiar with Kabbalah at all?
Well, I mean, I know it's the Jewish thing of magic, and I do talk about it with David Ewing Jr. And it's, I guess, some people might consider that what, black magic or something, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So, how many explanations for reality would you say there are?
I would imagine there should be only one.
Yeah, well, come on. We already know that there's two. We've got the heliocentrists out there. We've got pressurized pizza domers out
Oh,
there.
okay, okay. You mean how many models? How many
Yeah.
models are there? Okay.
hmm
I don't know. There must be like dozens, right?
Actually, I only know of three. I was asking if you knew of any more than the three.
Well, okay. So we have the globe model. This is
Mhm.
one we are all familiar with. Okay. We have the Gleason's map AE projection, right? So,
Mhm.
and then we have your model that I'm aware of, and your model is similar to the one that I was looking at, and I don't know the name for the other one, but it's kind of looks like the stereographic virtual reality map that you guys have, but it's like it's different. This is something that I presented a couple days ago. And then I know that the FPB Angel, they have like the Mercator's map model where it's kind of like the Pac-Man style also with the gates, the sun gates, the sun goes through across
All
this
right. I I just want to interrupt there and say we don't talk about the sun going across portals or gates ever. Ever. That's not part
I'm
of.
not accusing you of saying
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm talking about FPB Angel.
Gotcha.
FPV Angel and the what are they called? AMP Research or whatever. They have a Mercator's map, Mercator's projection map. You know the Mercator's map, like that's just on a 2D piece of paper,
hmm
and then they say that like from Enoch that the gates goes, the sun goes through different gates, and then it pops out on the other end. So let's say I know of like five different maps, you know, but
Okay.
really three are probably the most um yeah, like we understand three maps to be like the most well known within the flat Earth community. Is the AE map, the globe map, and probably your map is another one.
But
So
yeah,
okay.
so I just well, let's work on our terminology. We try to not call it a map because maps are taken from projections. What we're trying to get to the root and talk about the actual coordinate system and its projections. And we've been making some breakthroughs on this recently. Hopefully, we get to it because we've done scaled models of 2D projections of the coordinate system and 3D projections. And I think you'll be shocked, actually, at the way the coordinate system itself actually projects. You might find it
Okay.
interesting. Let's keep on moving here. Now, you sort of mentioned that you don't talk about who the creator is. Is that part of your search at all, or not something that you're really?
Well, I mean, no, it's like I am my reasoning behind that, this is just me. My reasoning behind that is that everybody's at different like, positions in terms of their relationship, let's just say, with the creator, and I don't want to confuse people by saying God this or God that because like people might elicit like their own projection of what that word means to them. Now, of course, I will touch on it here and there, but I like to be very, I don't know, sacred toward like in my approach because I think it is a very fundamental thing of what we are experiencing on this earthly plane. So like I don't want to be flippant and
Yeah.
just to talk about it as if I am like all understanding of like what that like word is not the case at all. So I try to be careful of even approaching that topic so that I don't make the mistake of like just speaking like flippantly.
Yeah.
Really, that's one of the main reasons as to why.
That's fine. So, can you speak to what you think the purpose of life is? This is one of those deeper questions regarding reality. What is the purpose of life in your position?
Okay, well, um, I can only speak about it in personally speaking because I do kind of think that different people have different purposes to their lives, and that's why we all have the lives that we live, right? And then part of that purpose is to experience uh, you know, the life, this life, and the pleasures and the pains that come along with it. And I don't know what the grand scheme of things of what that is, to God or for God per se. But like at least for myself, like I want to quote unquote discover the truth of what this reality has to offer in this humanly form, right? And that becomes a kind of a quote unquote underlining purpose or the common purpose that I am always trying to move towards, no matter what I am doing. So, like, I guess discovering or uncovering the truth of what this reality is a the purpose of the life that I want to live or I am living.
I think that's a good answer. Um, so, what are the most important truths that you fight for personally? Which things have you isolated as the biggest deceptions that you've set your heart to make right and share the truth with everybody?
Well, I think there are different layers to what we call the truth. That yes, I can agree. Truth has to be objective, but and that's kind of like the objective truth is a truth that we can all touch and share. But I do think there's something to be said about what we call subjective truth, which is that, for example, like if I had a particular experience of what this reality is, and let's say I had a spiritual experience, nobody can take that away from me. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, no matter how many people may go against me and tell me that that's not a real experience and that was just some, I don't know, illusory thing. They can say that, and they may not be wrong according to their perspective because I cannot prove to them my personal experience, but I know that I have had that personal experience. So that is a subjective thing, very much a subjective thing. And so that truth of that reality, which I had experienced, cannot be shared with other people. Other people can only like resonate with it because they had something similar happen to them, and they said, yes, I had some kind of a experience that was similar to that, but it is very subjective indeed. So I think this reality, because we live as like human beings, quote unquote, and we are experiencing the world in the outside of ourselves, but we also have a world within ourselves. And then when you combine both of that, that is the quote unquote, the reality, because God is neither subjective nor objective, or maybe you can say that is all objective, right? Then then everything kind of merges into that thing that we define as that oneness of things. So
Well, I think everybody's experience of the objective is subjective, right? That's what I'll agree to.
yep.
So a lot of people YouTubers get accused of being one-trick ponies. Do you do more than just flat Earth, or is flat Earth like basically the only topic that you really do?
I am heavily invested in the flat Earth, or I don't like to call it flat Earth. I like to call it level Earth. But yes, I am. But I think I talk about other things that are of interest to me, right? So, am I a one-trick pony? Maybe. I mean, depending on how often you watch my show and when you watch my show, and then every time you come by and then you hear me talk about love or earth, then I could be a one-trick pony to you, right? But I don't want to say like, oh, I talk about so many topics. I'm so versatile either. I mean, it's like I talk about the things that is of interest to me that I have looked into, and I share that information with other people. If people resonate with that, that's great. If not, that's also fine.
All right. So a couple more questions here, just sort of like in the general topic, and then once we get into some of these things where I bring up some screen shares and stuff like that, what I want to be able to do is have some common vocabulary that we can agree on and not miscommunicate on. And so one of the words that I hear used in terrible, terrible ways is the word force. So would you be willing to define what a force is in your opinion?
Yeah, and I guess we could have reserved this for the later conversation, but we might as well talk about it now since you asked. So force is probably the way I would define it is like energy that's converted to action or motion.
Okay. Um, Now, is it just physical in nature, or is it also, see, like when I think of force, I think of pushing and pulling something, like mechanical energy, like a work engine. Getting work done is actual force. You push
Okay.
something, you lift something, that
So
type of physical manipulation type force. And now I do recognize that there are other things that affect, something's position. So there are magnetic fields, there are, things
yeah.
like that, but they're not the same as force because a magnetic field has a point of origin where everything is strongest at that point of origin and then gets weaker and weaker as you go away from it. So I just want to get real clear when we're talking about force, are we talking about the physical push pull or
Yes. Well, okay, let me just interrupt you real quick, Jason.
mhm.
So far as I understand it, and this is something that I had to learn, that there is no such thing as quote unquote pull. Pull is a word that we use, like for example, like when we look at a door, we pull the door to ourselves. So it's a semantic thing between like a pushing a door and pulling a door, but the actual force that is applied to that door is always going to be a push. And the way I would describe it is that when you pull on that door, when you pull that door towards you, yes, that is the directionality of that action pulling towards you rather than pushing away from you. But however, the force that is applied to that door handle is always going to be of a push nature. And what I mean by that is like when you grab onto the handle of that door, and you quote unquote pull on that handle, you're applying that force to the back of the handle, which quote unquote pulls, which is actually forcing or pushing upon that door handle, which pulls on that door, which ultimately makes that door open. So all force or all action is of a push nature in reality, as far as I'm concerned.
So how would you explain pull-ups?
Pull-ups is the same thing. So when you actually do a pull-up, like you are applying force, like where's the pressure? It's actually on your hands on the bar, right? So the area in which we are grabbing, right? Area in which that you're grabbing, right? So yes, the pull up is called a pull up. That's the action, just the same as like when you pull a door. But all this push, you're applying pressure downwards on that bar. So you're pushing down on that bar, like you're lifting yourself, and that lift can only occur by pressing down on that bar. And then if you can do a muscle up, that is also pushing down on that bar. So that is a pull up in semantics in the language, but the actual force is of a push nature. Same thing.
All right. So like if a car goes off a road and a tow truck comes and hooks up a cable to it, it doesn't pull the car out, it actually pushes the car out.
Well, again, you're getting lost in the weed of the semantics of that word of push and pull, and then that action is described as a pull that is pulling the car. It is latched onto that car, so that whenever we are dragging something, that is a pulling force. But the actual physical nature of what is happening is that the chain that is hooked to the car, the where's the pressure? The pressure is actually the chain, each of the chain that is connected to that car, that is being pulled by that engine, that is run by that tire, everything moving. It is all in the push nature. It's all
Okay.
push.
So in a tractor pull, the sled behind is pushing the tractor.
Again, Jason, you're doing the semantics thing. So yes, the tractor that is pulling the sled is actually the word that we're using is pulling. Yes, it is pulling, but the actual physical thing that is happening is that it is pushing. There's only pushing in the physical force. Okay, so
Okay.
if we cannot get to a kind of an agreement about that, then we're not going to have to. We can't agree on this. So
Yeah,
that's
we might not. So, but I
yeah,
do. So semantics is really important in my opinion
yeah,
because arguments can win or die based off of a semantic issue, right?
sure. Yeah, yeah. That's why it's good to define terms and understand like what we think about a particular word, right? And then try to define it as the best we can. And we have to agree that the push and pull are words. Yes, I agree that those are different words for action. Like when you pull a door or push a door, that's why we have different words for the directionality of that action. But the actual physical force can only be push.
All right, so I got one more question for you, sort of like in this general lead up, and that is how do you explain day and night? Um, there's
Okay.
three models that I know of. Maybe you know of something else that you're just going to let me know of something I haven't heard of before. But
Okay.
how do you explain day and night? And I'll get a graphic ready and do a screen share for you.
Sure. I would say, right, a day and night are divided between a dawn and, a sunset, right? The setting. So, like, the dawn is there, and then, once the sun is above the quote unquote horizon, then the day occurs, and then as the sun sets, and then it is behind the horizon, let's just say, then that is when the night occurs. So that's how I would describe a day and night, right?
Yeah, I'm going to give you. You should. Can you see the screen share that I put up?
Yeah, I can. I'm gonna go back to our Zoom section because I was over at the StreamYard studios, and then I need to take a closer look at it. Um, let's see. I'm gonna do the viewing option. Let's see. Let's do original size. And well, boy, it's like I have to get back to fit the window because it's very small, and I can't read the top because there's like wording at the very top. You're viewing Jason Laufenberg's screen, and then that is covering up some of the words. So you have to read it for me, the very top section, because it doesn't fit in the screen.
Yeah, it says there are only three models of reality that can explain day and night.
Okay.
So
Okay.
the first explanation would be spinning balls. That would be
Right.
geocentrism or heliocentrism.
Right. Right.
The second option would be the horizontal circles, like that happen in a pressurized pizza dome.
Right. Right.
And then the third option would be equidistant circles tilted based on latitude. So,
I think I'm with the third option, like at least like I used to believe in the circling sun back in the day when I was a flurf, but nowadays that I think the celestial is doing all kinds of crazy things that I cannot explain how that actually works in a particular model. So yes.
all right, well that's big because the only the only model that can use the equidistant circles tilted based on latitude, it has the sun, moon, stars all rising from Earth and setting into our Earth. You understand that, right?
Yeah, so let me just ask you a quick question before we continue. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, in your opinion, is the sun triangulable? Is that I don't want to use the word physical object because it's a, but is there one singular sun in your model?
Well, we say it's a virtual reality, and
Okay. Yes.
that the luminaries rotate around the observer based on the observer's altitude. So the smallest circle would be when the observer is lowest to the ground, right? And
Okay.
that would be the smallest circle of sight. And then if you go up in elevation, your circle of sight expands, and thus the path of the luminary around you. Now, its rotation is always 15 degrees per hour, right? That doesn't
Always.
change
That never changes. That the sun is always rotating at 15 degrees an hour, correct?
around the observer. Yes.
Around the observer, it is always 15 degrees per hour. Okay.
Yeah, and it's I mean there's slight variations because the sun falls behind the fixed stars, right? So it's a fraction slower than the fixed stars, and then the moon falls behind the sun. It's slower than the sun. So not all three of them can be going 15 degrees an hour, but that's a general rule most people understand, right?
No, I'm just talking about the sun. So you're saying that the sun is traversing around the observer at 15 degrees per hour.
Yeah, let me show you another way. We've got tons and tons of tools here that we can play with and take a look at it pretty much any which way you want to. Let's go to, this is called Andrew Marsh.
Yep.
And so with this model right here, you can see that it has the sun rising from a plane. I'll show you.
Okay.
Here's the date slider. Here's the time slider. So comes up through the plane, and this tool actually shows you the shadows, which direction they'll be projected, how long they'll be projected. Let me get this back to equinox, and we can look at this for tons of.
I'm sorry. Real quick, do you think that this information, this Andrew, what was his name, his site? Because I played around with this before. There is a slight discrepancy between this site and the SunCalc data. I do believe, right? Or are they similar enough, or are they like close enough to really be negligible?
Yeah, we're talking hundredths of a degree per second, like very minute amount. They both go to 100th of a degree per second, and so this is just a top-down projection of what we're looking at, right? If we go to here, now we can see it from all different views, right? But it's the same data. If I run the time on this, same day, same location, this is the rise and set azimuth. The solar noon.
SunCalc, right there. That's the SunCalc, right?
Yeah. So that's this right here. I just want to point out every single model that shows the sun rising from Earth. You see how it came out of Earth right here? You see how it comes out of Earth? Then it comes around and it sets back into Earth. Every single model that shows the sun path in this way has to be a virtual reality model, because this can't be globe data, because they don't say that the sun rises from Earth. They don't say that the sun sets into Earth. And it can't be the single pole pressurized pizza domers, because they say the sun never sets. Right? So these models right here, actually, every single one of them that shows the luminaries rising from Earth, setting into Earth, we've got some real simplified versions of these models that you can look at. That here's in the north, and you can see that for the observer here, they've got the counterclockwise rotation in a circle of sight. But what's the stars doing? They're rising from Earth and setting into Earth in a person's circle of sight here, right?
Okay.
You see that?
Yes, I do. I hope my audience can see it, and I don't know how to change it so they can see it even better. You cannot start screen share while the other participant is sharing. Okay, no problem. Hey guys, this is the best I can get. I don't know how I can make my screen even bigger. Can I do a full screen layout? Yes, I guess I could. Am I audible still if I do the full screen layout?
Yeah, you sound good.
Because I just want, yes, I just want everybody to be able to see that better, because I'm trying to get rid of myself on the side. But go ahead.
Yeah, so what we've got here is a model where you can see the star rotations. If we're in the north right here, we have our counterclockwise rotation. And when you turn around and look back here, you can see that the south polar rotation is below the horizon. Now, if we bring this to the equator, now what you see here is that both the North Pole and the South Pole are at the horizon.
Yeah.
All right. And when we go south of here, the South Pole tilts up until we get to a point like here's 80 degrees. This is going to be Union Glacier, right? and never setting sun here,
Yeah.
right?
And the stars should be doing the same thing above the observer's head, that it would be circling around, making that perfect concentric circle. So,
The moon the moon actually stays up for 14 days at a time,
hmm hmm
circling around the observers down here,
hmm
right? At Union
okay.
Glacier. So here's another model that this one you can actually see if
So
I'll
you're
stop.
saying that I'm sorry, you're saying that the people going down to Antarctica and you're saying that they will see the 24-hour sun. And I know this will be a later on conversation about the TFE, but
Yeah,
you're saying that this is a natural phenomenon and there's no sun simulator necessary, that they will see the 24-hour sun in Antarctica.
yeah. So if I bring you back to this model right now,
Yeah.
we're at like 30 degrees north latitude. That's roughly where you're at in New Orleans as well. So this is
I'm
this
in New Iberia, but whatever. I mean, it's
yeah,
2.5 hours away from New Orleans, but yes.
okay. So this right here, if I move us farther south, watch what's happening here with
Okay.
the tilt of the ecliptic. So as I go south here, once I get down to the equator,
Hmm.
here the ecliptic is tilted 90 degrees up, and this is when you are going to have at the spring and fall equinoxes, you have the sun rising 90 degrees east, setting 270 degrees west, and you have the straight line path of the shadows. So this is another one of those huge debunks of any sort of circular one pole model.
Yeah. Can I stop
Because
you? Oh,
yeah,
go ahead. You finish. You finish, and then let me ask you a question.
because as I continue south of here, watch how this ecliptic continues to tilt over like this more and more and more.
Yes.
Now, what I want to point out is that 23 and a half degrees to the north of west, 23 and a half degrees to the south of west, that's
Okay.
this yellow band right here,
Okay.
right? And that is what they call the ecliptic. And because of the width of this band right here, as I go farther and farther south, we will get to a point where you're going to see that yellow ring start coming up above the ground here. All right, and at this point, we can see that a 24-hour sun is possible. Not at the
Right.
equinox right now, because at the equinox right now, the sun is rising 90 degrees east and setting 270 degrees west. But
Right.
if we adjust our date out here to um, here we are, beginning late November here at this location, we have a 24-hour sun. You see that?
Yeah.
And not only that, there's some interesting things that take place. You can see that we have a strong shadow as the sun's coming around to its highest zenith here. And notice as it comes around and makes this loop to the south here, how our shadows are going to become almost, yeah, like nothing, even though the sun didn't go below the horizon. So the sun, if it's too close to the horizon here, doesn't cast shadows until it's a little bit higher. So
Hmm.
once we get to a point where they're going to like 79 degrees at Union Glacier, here's 80. Um, so now you can see hard shadows all the way around.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So I wanted to ask you because like when you use this I don't know application, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
use this application or SunCalc application on the equinox, right? On an equinox, and then you
Mm-hmm.
go from the same longitudinal line from all like north all the way down to south, like
Mm-hmm.
in the south north of the equator and to the south of the equator, right? So let's say we have three different locations of the one longitudinal line, right? During equinox, whether it be September or I guess the other one is what, March or something, wherever you want to go to. And then you look at the angle of the sun rising and setting, which is should be 90 degrees from any point of that longitudinal line
Hmm.
on the equinox, correct?
Yeah.
And then it
Yeah.
sets at 270 on the same longitudinal line. So like all above from the north to the equator to the south, the sun is quote unquote rising at 90 and setting at 270.
Yeah.
Correct?
I'll show that to you again. So let's go to the March right about here. You're going to see that even though we're at 65 degrees south, the sun did rise at exactly 90 degrees east. Now, its solar noon declination is much lower here, but it will set at 270 degrees west. Now,
Okay.
let me go ahead and pull this up to a higher. We'll go up north here, and
Okay, so it's 90 degrees and then setting at 270, but what's only difference is that is the trajectory or the azimuth, is that the correct or the arc? That's the arc
as
of the sun.
azimuth is your compass headings, right? Telling you that direction. Your altitude tells you
Mm,
the height of the sun here. So
mhm.
it gives you the data here, the azimuth and the altitude. And yeah, so it at the same longitude, but different latitudes. You can see everywhere on Earth it's rising 90 degrees east, setting 270 degrees west. But it's only at the equator that you're going to have this straight line path where the shadows run perfectly east and west like this. But there's a perfect mirroring between the north and the south, where 6 months out. So if you're up here in the north, let's go up. Here we are up by Rippon here, and
Yeah.
so here's the March equinox in the north,
Hmm.
and if we go to like 42 degrees south, right, the longest days of the year, are always going to be when the sun is making these largest paths. A lot of people have a hard time explaining the length of day. And when you watch a model like this, all of a sudden the length of day becomes very obvious because you can see that now it's taking a path that is the longest path. So the sun's
Yeah.
moving at 15 degrees an hour as it in this constant rotation. And let me turn this way. It'll show the full circuit underneath. You can see that this is a constant revolution that never changes anywhere. But because it's got this longer path right here, these are huge angles coming up from the southeast, setting to the southwest. But because of this is the reason why down here we've got almost 17 hours of daylight,
Right.
because
Right.
there's just this tiny little circle here is where it's
Mm-hmm.
below the horizon.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I
All
see
right,
that.
so yeah, you've got daylight hours, you've got twilight times.
I mean,
Really,
I agree with this. I mean, there's nothing that I disagree with in regards to this information. You know, like I think the sun calc has not been debunked, and I don't think people can debunk the sun calc data. And the sun calc data is more or less showing us that there is the angular paths of the sun that is mirrored from the north and the south in the same latitudinal degrees, and the fact that there is a quote unquote 24-hour sun in the Arctic and the Antarctic at the different summers, right?
no.
So
Have you noticed that with sun calc here that it's impossible to not have the sun rise from Earth?
no, I didn't. What do you mean? Like, there's no place where the sun would not rise? Is that the question?
No, there's no place that you can get on here where you can get the sun to like go around the Earth, like it's in outer space, like it's a ball, like it's a pressurized
Oh.
pizza dome.
Well, yeah. Well, I didn't really think about that because I never considered that to be a thing, anyways, right?
Yeah, it rises and sets from Earth. Now these paths right here are way too big because What would you say is the farthest distance that we've ever been able to see from a ground-based observation?
Of the sun?
No, farthest distance that we can see from a ground-based observation on Earth. What's,
Farthest distance?
yeah.
Oh boy. Well, I guess the world record is something like 275 miles from like, some photo to some island somewhere, maybe off the coast of like Israel or something like that. So I don't know, like 275 miles.
Yeah, I'm going to show you something here, and you can test it out for yourself. But we did this podcast about 10 months ago, talking about the real distances we can see revisited. And what had happened is we came across this information that the farthest that Mount Everest has ever been sighted from
Hmm.
is 200 kilometers, which is like 120 miles.
Yeah, 120 miles. Okay.
All right, so that's the tallest thing in the world, which is going to have the largest circle of sight.
I've
So,
I've seen I've seen the Himalayas from Kathmandu, and that's probably about 120 miles.
that's
I had to.
that's that's what this is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this
I
is
I I I have eyewitnessed and seen the Himalayas from Kathmandu, and then actually from a mountain called Shivapuri. So Shivapuri is about 2,000, I think 700 meters above sea level. So there is a little spot in Shivapuri. It's like a 4-hour hike to get up to Shivapuri, and then on a clear day, you can actually see the Himalayan range from Shivapuri Mountain in Kathmandu. I
okay.
have
Is
seen with my own eyes.
Yeah, that's what this video is. Is somebody with a Nikon P1000 in
Hmm.
Kathmandu actually filmed Everest, and so
Oh, okay.
this stands right here as the world record that's verifiable, and nobody's been able. You would not be able to see anything farther, right? Because Mount Everest is the tallest thing on Earth. It's going to have the biggest circle of sight. Obviously, you would be able to see it from the farthest away. There would be nothing else that you could see farther. So there's a lot of disinformation out there. That Beyond Horizons website that gets pushed by Jeranism and Witsit and all these other guys. Have you
Well,
looked at?
let's not talk about them too much. I mean, like, let's. I just want to talk about like your model and your belief and the disinformation stuff. I guess we can touch on it if you want, but yeah, like so you are saying that this is the record, right? The 120 miles. I thought there is a camera or a photo of somebody saying that the this is a world record of 275 miles, but that doesn't count. I guess that would be
What?
the question that I would.
But the thing is we've done the videos and podcasts where we go through and individually debunk these things and show really how crazy it would be to think that it's possible, because they're being done from lower elevations to other things of lower elevations, which means that the circles of sight would not be as big. You wouldn't be able to see as far, and so the whole Beyond Horizons website is just like a word published site that fake flat earthers created back 7 years ago, and they started putting out false evidence of being able to see too far. Because what it does is it makes the truth discreditable. When somebody runs around saying we can see 200 or 600, there's people that claim with the infrared cameras that they can see 1,200 miles, 2,500
Oh, okay.
miles, right? You,
Okay.
you see how that could make the actual truth look crazy when the farthest Mount Everest has ever been seen from is 120 miles?
Yeah. Okay. This is your claim. I'm not going to make a positive claim one way or another. I'm just listening to your information, and according to you, the furthest that we can actually see is 120 miles. Okay.
Well, for
So.
for a ground-based observation. Now, if
Okay.
if you were at the top of Mount Everest, obviously you would have the largest circle of sight, and you would be able to see the distance that you can see from the top of Mount Everest.
Okay.
right?
So what does it mean to you? Like what should I derive? What should I understand from this information?
Well, just the limitations to the distance that we can see. That claims beyond 120 miles aren't going to be able to be substantiated.
Okay. Fine. Let's say that is the case.
Uh,
So there are people who are falsifying that information and claiming that we can see actually further. Let's just say, and then we should be wary of the facts. So, I mean, you have an understanding of how, I guess that would be dependent on our evidence of how we have come to that conclusion of that being that is falsified, like whatever infrared photo saying that, oh, off the coast of Israel, we saw mountains over at Crete, and according to Google Map, that it is like 200 some miles away, and that is just not possible, is what you're getting at, right?
yeah. So what you can do is you can take the elevation of where you're taking the photograph from and the elevation of what you're photographing to, and see whether or not their circles of sight even intersect each other. If the circles of sight don't intersect each other, then it's impossible to see each other.
Okay, can you tell me what the circles of sight means?
Sure. So if you imagine like two old ships where there's a crow's nest up at the top of a mast,
Okay.
all right, each one of these masts, let's say, is 100 feet tall. So you can see farther from the crow's nest than you can from the deck of the boat.
Right.
Right. You have a larger circle of sight. And
Yes.
now you have another ship that's so far away from you that it's beyond the horizon, right? It's gone beyond the vanishing point. You can't see it anymore. But you've got this guy up in the crow's nest over there, and now these two ships start coming towards each other. The guys in the crow's nest are going to be the first people to be able to see each other before they see the rest of the boats revealed, right?
And what if they had a binocular or telescope? They would be able to see each other like even further away, right?
You can only magnify what's in your circle of sight. So once something's gone beyond the horizon, it's you cannot zoom it back in anymore. Have you
Okay,
heard?
so what does it mean? Like when something has gone beyond the horizon, what does that mean?
So I've got a video called Mall Angel, and what it demonstrates is on a flat mall. There's a girl walking away, and as she's walking away, I have a camera down low at the ground, and then what happens is her feet begin to disappear. Now, if it was a long enough hallway, she would shrink and disappear from the bottom up until she couldn't be seen anymore. And there's no amount of zoom that brings that back in once
Right,
something's.
because of the angular like limitation of that lens, right? Is that the reason why? And that camera is like right on the ground, and this girl is like walking away from that camera, right? And then
Mhm,
the girl more. I mean, and we know that the mall is flat, the Home
mhm,
Depot is flat,
mhm,
right? It's measured flat, and then as
mhm,
the girl walks away, she is disappearing bottom up, as we see with ships, right?
mhm.
To the point where if it was long enough, I guess that she would completely disappear. Correct?
Yeah. So there's an actual formula that tells you the distance to the horizon. It's the height of the observer in feet squared times 1.22459, and that'll give you the distance to the horizon in miles. And we've got
Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
it's just a formula.
Okay.
And it's not based on curvature or anything like that. It's an algorithm, and so
Right.
that's the position that I'm going to be taking on a lot of these things, is that they're just algorithms, they're codes. This is the way Earth was created. So uh, we'll get to acceleration and all that kind of stuff coming up. But what I want to show you here quick is
Yep.
this is the stereographic virtual reality explained,
Okay.
how the only working map and model of reality works. So one of the things that we first learned was that Earth has two poles. We were out there, we were supporting the single pole. Ronnie was supporting Jeranism, and we when I first started making videos, I was there's a dome and all this kind of stuff until I started trying to model it, and then
Well,
we had
just
uh, like 8 years ago.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Just trying to understand the context though. Back in like what, 2016
Yeah.
ish. This is what you where you were at. Okay.
Yeah. And so I tried to make it work, but we had people that were coming in and telling us, glowers, that were saying, there's two poles, check out the southern pole rotation, you're denying it. And we looked into it, and they were right. There
Yeah.
are two poles, and we were denying it. But when we realized that there were two, we knew that we had to go find a map or a coordinate system that had two poles,
Okay.
right? So
Hmm.
this right here, stereographic, even though it might look like there's three poles right here, if you actually count the lines of longitude that are coming into both sides here, you can see that half is over here, half is over here, and that it's just two poles, but the poles are split here. Now,
Why
I'll
are they
be
split?
well because of the distortion that actually exists within the coordinate system, and I hope we get to that because that's
Okay.
that's
More advanced stuff, but I think people would be curious to know why the map is shaped the way it is, obviously. So go ahead, continue on, sir.
yeah, well,
I
something
didn't
that
mean to.
some no, that's fine. Something that we've learned along the way is that we've got this tool now that allows us to center it to any location. So you'll notice that if I click right about here, we're going to end up with a real similar orientation to the one that we've been using the last 7 years.
Okay.
And you saw what happened. It went from having no poles. There was no North Pole. There was no South Pole. When I
Hmm.
clicked on it, all of a sudden we have a North Pole, and it split the poles in the south.
Yeah.
Now, if I go
Yeah.
south of the equator, watch what happens. It'll bring the South Pole together, and it'll split the North Pole.
This is
Right?
a website. Is that engaging data.com? Is that
Yeah,
a web? Okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
So this right here is a projection of the coordinate system where whatever you're centered on is correct. Now there's distortions everywhere else. Now if we go back here and look at France in the coordinate system, the line of latitude here and here, these are being correctly depicted as far as the lengths of the longitudes, as far as the lengths of the latitudes are concerned. But you can obviously see out here that other sections are being greatly distorted. Now, if you click on it, it'll bring it around into focus, and now all of a sudden, here's our lines of latitude being correctly depicted as far as the lengths, because at the equator, the latitude is the longest, and then it gets shorter to the north that you go, and it gets shorter to the south. So you can see here it's being depicted where it's getting shorter to the north, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
But it's real blown out here in the south. But
Hmm.
if we orient to the south, now all of a sudden we have the correct depiction where all of a sudden from the equator here, the lines of latitude are getting shorter and shorter as you come down to a pole
Yeah.
until you go all the way to the pole. And then here we actually have a perfect coordinate system where all the lines of longitude are their correct lengths and all the lines of latitude are their correct lengths.
Okay.
All right, so this is one of the wild things about the coordinate system is this is the only way that you can get an accurate representation of a coordinate is by centering on it. You cannot get one overall. Let me reset this. Let me reset this to its default. So this
So
is, in a lot of ways similar to like a Mercator, right?
yeah, it is. Yeah. Can I just ask you a quick question? So
Yeah.
basically, the coordinate system that you're talking about is that everything is kind of chopped up into this like little grid. We have like a chopping block, and we have like the map of the world on there, and then you just chop it up into little squares, and then when you center on different points, it distorts the lines to whatever shape, but basically proportionally those lines are going in the same areas. Like if you just chop up a little section, little square of America, and then no matter where you center yourself, it's going to distort the shape of that according to the perspective. But coordinate wise, everything remains the same. So it just looks like it's all like weird shaped because right now it's perfect, like what squares or whatever,
Yeah,
or rectangles. But then when you have different centers, it'll give you different shapes, but it will still work in terms of map coordinates. Correct?
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Now, the thing is the coordinate system, the data shows that the poles are points. They have no length to them. So
Okay.
this right here, when it's stretched out like this has a north pole the whole length of this. It has a south pole the whole length of this. It doesn't have them coming to points, but as soon as you click into this, all right, now all of a sudden we have a north point and we have a south point, and it's trying its
Okay.
best to represent how the lines of latitude are getting smaller, right, towards the poles, but it's
Yeah.
got these obvious distortions here, and we're not saying that this is reality, right? We're saying that wherever you are, you have to locate it, and then if I zoom in here and you actually do the research and check the length of the latitudes and the length of the longitudes here, this is the accurate way to depict the coordinate system, right? And this is the only way you can actually do this. So there's another 2D projection that I can show you that we're calling the diamond projection, but even with that, there's no rational way to put all the land masses from the out on a coordinate system. If somebody can, please show me. But let's keep going here and let's talk about the. So this is the first map that we found, and it took us a while to. These were really hard to find. This right here was the best image that we found for a while, and we had to rotate it and slice it, and eventually we were able to come up with this. And this is what we've been using for like 7 years now.
Okay.
But this is just one representation right here that is based on France. Right? So
Okay.
if you're up here in Alaska, this is not accurate. If you're these areas that look distorted are distorted, right? And that's where you would have to use that tool that we were just using.
Okay.
Now,
So, yeah, go ahead.
I
Go
just want
ahead.
to show you here. This is that the Andrew Marsh site. I recorded an equinox where I've got the sun going around, and what I've done is, because so many people have tried to straw man us and say that we say it's Pac-Man, that a sun is traveling between the tropics here, like above Earth, say like 3,000 miles high, like they have in the pressurized pizza dome, and that it's following between these lines, and it's going off one side and coming on the other side. And we've been trying so hard to get people to understand that what this is representing is the sun rising from Earth, setting into Earth in a person's circle of sight, and this is how day and night travel across the face of Earth,
So
right?
this is what they would call a mean sun, right? This is a mean sun.
So all these mean and observed, we only refer to the sun, and that would be the one that we can actually pinpoint. Where if you've got a theodolite, if you're zooming in with a camera or something like that, that it's the sun that you see, right? No ulterior fake suns reflecting off of domes or
No,
anything
no,
like that.
we're not talking about that. What I mean, I can comprehend and understand the position that each location will have its own sun system, including the stars and the moon. So the observer at a location will have its own observation. But like this, the sun in the way it's represented and the night and in the various locations is what people would commonly call the mean sun because that's the average like trajectory of that sun, you know, the
Yeah.
average.
So yeah, the mean sun is usually a measurement to the center of the sun, like when it's rising and setting at the horizon. They'll talk about the center of the sun being the mean sun, as opposed to, you could measure to the front edge or the top edge or the bottom edge, but the mean sun is the middle of the sun. I can show you, like in stellarium. Hopefully this.
Okay. So, uh, anyways, like basically you
Actually,
have a map and then you have the sun, and that is kind of a, it's not because like I think your position probably is that each location has its own observation of the sun, correct?
yeah, every observer. So
Yeah.
every living creature and all things that like cameras, video cameras, all that kind of stuff. Everything that's going to record uh, visual data is going to see just one sun, the same group of stars,
Based
the
on the
one
location,
based
right?
on their
Good.
location.
Right. Okay.
Absolutely. All right. So jumping through this, we've got some evidence of.
But are you going to explain about the map at some point and how you came to this point of the because like okay like I think there's a kind of a technicality in terms of like Pac-Man versus asteroids or whatever. Like it's not the fact that it's like it's a kind of a demeaning, I suppose, to say it that way. That is a Pac-Man, map or whatever. But the ideal being is that there is some kind of a disappearance and reappearance in a different location is what is like indicated or implied. So is that what is actually happening with this map when the sun the like when a physical object goes to that left part of the map, it will pop out on the right side of the map, right? But like
Mm,
everything is measured flat. We understand that everything is level, right? The whole of this reality is measured level. So we are
mm,
in agreement that, we are living on a level earth, correct?
absolutely.
Okay, fine. Good. But then how and the shape of that level Earth, that's where we start to, diverge a little bit from, the AE map versus this map, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Okay, good.
the AE map has got one sun up 3,000 miles high, doing circles around a single pole.
Right. Yeah. 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 Well, is it possible? I'm just asking in your mind that have you considered that the AE map itself is correct, but the celestials and how it's working? Because, like, again, like even in your position, the celestial is based on the observer of that location. So everybody is seeing their own, sun and the stars and the moons like circling around them. Let's just say could that be a possibility on an AE map, or the AE map is just not correct?
It's impossible because it only has one pole, and Earth has two poles. So there's no way to represent it with just one pole. It's just
Okay.
it's simply impossible. I can show you.
So that's
I
the
can.
problem, right? That's the main crux of the issue, really, because I feel like it's really good to try to nail this down as much as possible. Is
Mm,
that the problem that you have with the AE map is that there is one pole, the North Pole, and South Pole, there is no South Pole. So like the model somewhat works when you go towards the north, but then it gets too distorted when you go down to the south, is really what the issue is. So in your model, right? You have the stereographic two poles. You have the North Pole and the South Pole, and then so the way the celestial is actually working on this map is correct, right? It is accurate.
mm. It
Okay.
is, yeah. Yeah. So, and then here's some of the footage. This was actually the first video I ever took when I got the P900. And so I had no idea that this is what it looks like when you zoom into a sunrise and a sunset. In my very first footage, I got clouds behind the sun, but this, just seeing the sun rise from the water, right? And when you look at what's taking place there, like so many people have recorded this now
Mhm.
that it's not fake, it's not CGI. When the sun rises and the sun sets, how do you explain this type of
Uh,
phenomena?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm 100% with you, Jason. I do believe the sun rises and sun sets. Okay, I don't believe in the circling sun at all. Okay,
Yeah.
so you don't need to sell me on this thing, but please go continue and show us more evidence of how the sun is setting and rising on the flat plane. So
Have you heard of the green flash before?
I've heard of it, but I'm not sure what it is exactly.
Yeah,
Is that
it's
the green
just
flash?
yeah.
Is that the
Watch,
green flash? Yeah.
yeah, watch when this goes down here.
Mm-hmm.
And so guys like Q will say that the sun is materializing or dematerializing
Hmm.
right here. That that is not what a sun 93 million miles away being obscured by a Terminator line would look like, and it's obviously not 3,000 miles high.
Right.
It's within a person's circle of sight, but just by the
Yeah.
fact that they were able to record it,
Hmm. Hmm.
and so we've got these. This is what it looks like on water. We've got lots of green flashes here. Then there's the whole clouds behind the sun phenomena. Have you heard of this before?
Yes, I have.
Okay. What do you think about it? Have you looked into it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a thing. I mean, it's not something made up. I mean, it's clearly clouds are behind the behind the sun.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
you see that,
Yep.
and this when you film something like this, and you can actually see, okay, those are clouds that are in my circle of sight, where you can see that, all right, these are no more than 5-7 miles away from me. You can see that the sun is illuminating just that local spot right there.
Hmm.
It's not illuminating super brightly everything all around you like it's it was 3,000 miles high or 93 million miles away. It's literally right there in your circle of sight, and so this I think this is one of the easiest ways for a person to prove to themselves is just go out with a high zoom camera and start filming when it looks like the sun might into the clouds. Start recording, and
Hmm.
also pay attention when it's at sunrise and sunset,
Hmm.
because you can actually see it coming out of the ground.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Absolutely amazing. I mean, it's just like wow. Um,
Yeah,
that is
it's
absolutely just crazy to look at. I mean, it's clear as day as far as I can see. But I can agree that that is what I'm observing, and not this circling sun at all.
yeah. So if you take the time and you go through this video, I show the mirroring from the north to the south, separated by 6 months, and I talk about traveling across the international date line, and so the way I represented this. Let me get it to seeing maybe like this. All right, so Earth's a rectangle, all right, because it's 10,800 nautical miles from the North Pole to the South Pole, but it's 21,600 nautical miles from east to west at the equator.
Okay, so it's
I
like a
put
little bit smushed, right? It's like a shorter distance from North Pole to South Pole, and it's like almost double the distance from east to west, correct?
exactly.
Okay.
So the reason why I put two of these together is just so that you could see the day and night, how they run together like this, because I do simulate like an airplane traveling across the international date line here. So the boundaries, I've just put up these sort of like quasi invisible walls here just to represent that there's a boundary there, but it would be passable. And so in a virtual reality in 3D space, this is where the Bible talks about something hanging upon nothing. So in a 3D space like this, when you set out like a playing field, a coordinate system, if a game developer, it's Call of Duty or Fortnite or whatever it is, they define a playing field as far as the map, right? It's the full extent of the board, where if you get to a certain boundary, they're either going to make you stop there, or depending on the game, they'll allow you to pass through that side and come through in on the other side. You familiar with that? Are you a video gamer at all?
I don't play video games. I only play really chess these days. But are you talking about Asteroid? What game is this called?
I'm just talking about any 3D video game now. So like,
I don't play video games, but like, can you explain what happens in the video game? I kind of lost you for like during your explanation. Can you explain one
yeah,
more time, please?
they define a playing field, right? So
Yeah, 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 yeah.
in one of these games, they say it's going to be this wide by these dimensions, and
Okay. Yeah,
that's
yeah, 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 yeah.
right,
Okay.
and that and then that there's limitations to how high you can go and how
Right.
low you can go, and
Right.
that's the sandbox, you might call it.
Yeah.
And
Okay. Okay. I got you. Yeah. Agreed.
and so what we say here is that the deepest that we've ever gone on Earth is like 8 miles. Supposedly
Yes.
they bored a
Yeah.
hole.
Kola. Yeah. Kola deep dive over in
Hmm.
Russia, right?
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
the highest that we actually go in reality is really defined by pressure. Both down and up is defined by pressure, which would be
Mhm.
interesting when we start getting into the upward rising conversation because the pressure is highest at sea level or below sea level. So the lower you go below sea level, the more pressure there is, and then
Yep.
250,000 feet there is zero pressure, no pressure,
Zero pressure. Zero.
zero.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can show you those charts and stuff that have those numbers. It even will tell us like the temperatures at these different elevations and stuff like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
But that will explain why rockets, if you ever watch like a real rocket launch, the go fast style that
Hmm.
take off and their engines burn out once they get into the 150,000 feet to 200,000 feet range because we can look at the chart. There's almost no pressure left.
Right. They need to push off of something, but since they don't have anything to push off of, like while they were on the ground, as an example, that they have nowhere to go.
Yeah. So this chart right here, the PSI right here, it shows that if you could be 5,000 feet below sea level,
Okay.
the PSI would be 17.5. So that 8 mile dig, I don't know what it would be, but the higher the pressure, you can imagine that their drill bits would probably melt because there's so much pressure. That's
Hmm.
17 psi is a lot because even at sea level 14.7 psi,
Hmm.
that comes to like a ton per square foot. It's
Okay.
hard to imagine how much pressure is actually on the human body
Right.
at
I mean,
sea
it's
level,
it's
right?
enough to crush like submarines or something, right?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
So this shows as you go up here in elevation, the pressure coming down here, and then this chart stops at 50,000. Here it's at 1.61. If I go to the next tab here, this one's got larger increments, and you can see that the
200,000, 250,000 is at zero,
zero.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then these are the temperature variances, where if it's 60 degrees at sea level,
Hmm.
then it's like 41 at 5,000 feet, 30,000 feet minus 47. You can see that the temperatures drop, and then there's actually, it starts to rebound and go back up in temperature,
Okay.
right? From like 80,000 feet to 150,000 feet, and then all of a sudden the temperature drops again. Now, once there's
Okay.
no pressure, like high altitude balloons, all that kind of stuff, they're done. They pop because there's no pressure pushing back. They're expanded all the way, and then they burst. So
Okay.
we don't think that there's any like ongoing things levitating up in the air like satellites, whatever you want to
Okay.
call them. That I mean, they would have to stay in their operating range of like the 100 to 150,000 feet because
Okay.
once they get up too high, they just burst. And those are the only lighter than air vehicles. Everything else, it's going to fall to ground. Right?
Okay.
Um,
Satelloons. You're talking about satelloons, right?
Satelloons.
But do you believe that there is like anti-grav, quote unquote anti-grav technology? I mean, we do see like objects up in the sky, and I don't know about this dark night thing, and then the fake ISS. Obviously, I'm not here for to endorse space or NASA or anything like that, but like people say that there's an object that looks like ISS that is like flying up in the sky. And what is it? Just like a big object that is made to look like an ISS that's connected to a balloon that is like being, I don't know, swung up there back and forth or what?
I don't know.
No.
It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's a tough one to get into.
Right.
I don't believe in floating metal. All right, I'm just against floating metal, that you can put something up high enough that it won't come back down again.
Okay.
I don't believe in that.
Okay.
But lighter than air vehicles, like a big helium or hydrogen balloon, absolutely can go up to the highest limits. And then those rockets, if they have enough momentum, if they shoot it off and it picks up tons of momentum, and they have gotten up into the 300,000 range, that they went past the burnout where there's no more combustion, but they had the momentum that they and without any air pressure here, things become insanely light, right? So you do understand that the higher you go, the less things weigh, right?
I guess so. I mean, I can. So, like theoretically speaking, you can get up to a place up there where it doesn't weigh anything at all.
Well, all right. If you talk about drop experiments like with the bowling ball and feather in a vacuum chamber type situation, with no air, the two things fall at equal speed. So this this elevation right here, it's not a vacuum, right? This isn't a minus number. It's not like a vacuum chamber, but there simply is no air. So without something pushing without the pressure on an object, it is lighter. It is. The higher you
Okay.
go in altitude, the lighter you are. So don't sell your gold at the top of Mount Everest, right?
No, but I mean, the question still remains that theoretically, if you go further and further would you get to a point where you don't weigh anything at all?
Well, could you stay there though? All right, because everything that has a mass does fall back down to Earth. Those high altitude balloons, when they do burst, they don't just wisp away
But but if you
into
weigh
outer space.
nothing, but if you don't weigh anything, right, then you don't have any. I mean, essentially, you have no weight,
Well,
right?
see, this is a pressure. This is something that's added to an object. So
Okay.
an object has its own mass, which is defined by the density of
Right.
the material, right?
Hmm.
And so everything's got its own specific mass, specific density, but this is an added pressure on everything because these pounds uh, per square inch of pressure are pushing on something. You do weigh more at sea level than you
Sure.
do than you do. So at the top of Mount Everest, it's only like 4.3 psi. So you'd be
Okay.
considerably lighter up there.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, do you have more questions regarding the stereographic virtual reality? Have I explained this in
Yeah.
satisfaction to you?
Well, no, I thought that we would kind of get to the question of like you know the Pac-Man or the what do you call it, the asteroid type of thing, like so like how did you come to that conclusion that there must be some kind of a teleporting type of situation? Like how would you describe it? Like how would you describe like an airplane flying from east to west and then arriving again over on the other side
All
of the
right, let
map,
me let me play the video for you. I got it.
right?
So when we take off from Sydney and head to Honolulu in a straight path, we are doing what is called dead reckoning. Because heliocentrists have converted the stereographic map to a sphere and then made projections from a sphere, navigators have to use rule lines on their maps to dead reckon, whereas they are straight lines and the most direct route on a stereographic map. So here we are crossing the border and we see how sunrise is moving towards us. And as soon as we cross the border, we have now entered the previous day. Having the two maps side by side is just to show you the continuity of sunrise and sunset. You actually have to be wrapping around and coming out through the side border at the same latitude that you left from. There is not a new world for every day. So here we come into Honolulu, and it actually now makes sense how you could land before you took off, even though you were flying for nearly 10 hours.
So you're familiar with being able to land before you took off, even though you flew 10 hours?
Yeah, I mean, like, the day system, right? And the sun rises east to west, and then so like that's half a day. So if you're flying from Los Angeles to Honolulu, right, and then you're going in the same direction as the sun is supposedly moving, right, you can actually gain time. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, you can actually, like Sydney to Honolulu, you can take off before you, or land before you took off, right?
Yeah, but that's just based on our, clock system, right? So it's
Absolutely.
Sydney to Honolulu, okay? So that's fine. I'm okay with that, but how does that explain this kind of like teleporting thing that is happening with your map?
Well, there's a whole bunch of different ways we could look at that. One of the ways is this multiple. Well, we're doing 2-scale projections of the coordinate system in 2D and 3D, and so I did a recent video here 10 days ago. This was a response to QNFE. He keeps on saying things that aren't true.
You guys are like unbelievable, like how you guys go after each other constantly. But you guys feel the need to do that. I guess that's up to you guys. I just want to. For me, obviously none of us are perfect in any way, but since his name has been brought up, I did kind of get exposed to the SunCalc data, which I was very much unfamiliar with until I actually had a conversation with him. So
Yeah.
I am, grateful for the fact that I understand now that the sun rises and sets. And I understand the fact that the sun and the celestial is doing very weird things compared to the circling sun on the AE map. Now, I'm going to be very honest. I'm not completely sold on the stereographic map, but I'm not 100% on the AE map either. I don't know what kind of map is best. To be that I want to be open-minded. Only positive claim I can actually make is the fact that we are living on a level Earth. And the upward vector is something of a positive claim that I can actually make as well. So beyond that, I don't really have a dog in the race, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, let's just sort of go through and disassemble the single pole model here for a second. So when it's laid out like this, and you take the data from the coordinate system, and you actually project. That's all in this video where it gives the the actual lengths. Right. So from the South Pole to the North Pole, we have 10,800 nautical miles, and that gives a circumference here of, this is going to be big. Yeah, so 67,854 nautical miles ends up becoming the distance around the outside of this single pole, right?
Okay. Okay.
When in the coordinate system, it's a pole. It literally has zero length to it, just like the North Pole.
Okay.
Do you see how that would be a problem?
It's too big.
Yeah, in like a lot. It's got 24,000 24,658 nautical miles more distortion than the Mercator and Galpeters that have no poles. Right?
Okay. So
So
it's much bigger. It's like 50% bigger than these other maps,
yeah,
maybe
it's
even more.
so south is a single polar point, just like north is a single polar point. I can show that to you from the coordinate system. If we go to let's go to 80 degrees south. Switch this. Now we're going from 0 degrees, like at the prime meridian, to 180 degrees west. So we're getting like a half of a circle here. And so at 80 degrees south, half of the circle is 1,200 nautical miles. The total circle at 80 degrees south is 2,400 nautical miles. If we go to the South Pole, zero. It has no length whatsoever, just like at the North Pole. If we switch these to north, North Pole has no length, South Pole has no length. So the irrationality of a single pole model is pretty extreme, actually. Let me go back to my tab here. And I could go on and on and on. You can't get a 90 degree east, 270 degree west, sunrise, sunset on a circular model like this. It would always be rising north of east, setting north of west. Now there's so many details that we could go into. If you really did enjoy it, that when you do the calculation for the equator, the 2,600 nautical miles that are at the equator right here, what you end up with is the problem that the distance from the North Pole to the equator is 5,400 nautical miles, right? If you do the circumference for 5,400 nautical miles, you're not going to come up with 21,600. Watch this.
What do you come up with?
That total came to 39,045.
Okay, so it is much bigger. It's almost double in size of the circumference, right?
Yeah, now this was converted to statute miles here. Let's
39,000 statute miles rather than nautical miles. Nautical miles is bigger than a statute mile, right? So nautical mile is what, 1.2 statute mile or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what you'll see here is that based off of a radius from the North Pole to the equator, that 5,400 nautical miles, you are going to end up with an equator of 39,000 statute miles here, but everybody knows that it's like 24,000 statute miles, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the geometry doesn't even work.
24,900, 25,000 miles or whatever. It's close enough. Fine.
Mm-hmm. So the geometry doesn't work. I hope I'm getting that through to you, that even these circles, they get closer to the North Pole. You'll find out that if you do any of the calculations based on the radius, that you're going to come up with a circumference that doesn't match the coordinate
So,
system.
so we know that the from the North Pole to the South Pole is 10,800 nautical miles. That is not refutable in any way, right?
Yeah, I can show you. North Pole to South Pole, all on the same line of longitude, 10,800 nautical miles. If we go from
And what site is this? What is this a website?
this is National Hurricane Center. This is NOAA,
Okay.
right? Latitude, longitude, distance calculator. There's a whole bunch of these tools out there. I could show you. I could show you more. Whereas there's ones like this that you put in your two latitudes, two longitudes, and it'll give you a compass heading and a distance. It tells you exactly which direction to fly and how long. There's other ones that will actually map it out for you on. It's not that important. But that's the coordinate system, right?
Okay.
Yeah, and
And okay, so the conclusion really being is that there is a problem with the azimuthal equidistant projection, and then it couldn't possibly work because we know that and there has to be two poles as well. You're saying so, like you need another model that fits all that criteria, and the azimuthal equidistant cannot be it.
yeah, let me show you. Let me show you this. I'm going to have to reshare so that you can see this. All right, so here's a model that's sort of like an AE, but it behaves a lot more logically, because what it does is here you have your equal distance. You have your 5,400 nautical miles from the North Pole to the equator, right? And you have your distances out here. But the only way this works is for you to flip it over and put the South Pole on the bottom here.
Okay,
Right.
okay.
Because your lines of latitude are all getting smaller to a point again.
Yeah, so it's basically a smushed, it's a pancake version of the globe. It's you just got the globe and you just mushed it.
Yeah, this is actually a very accurate way of projecting the coordinate system, surprisingly.
Mm.
All right, it's not that bad, but what you have to do is follow the coordinate system. And the equator has to be the longest point. This has to be the 21,600 nautical miles.
Okay.
And then matching, the way they get smaller in the north, they match exactly the same, getting smaller in the south.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right, so you would actually have to flip over.
I comprehend it. I can comprehend what you're talking about, you know.
Okay, that's good. That's great. Where do we want to go from here?
Yeah. Well, I guess I mean like so like the reason why you came to the conclusion of the teleportation, like what are we going to call it? That teleportation, like asteroids? Is that
Uh,
asteroids? What do
you
you want to call
can't.
it?
You can, but there's. Let me just show you.
What's the respectful way of me to be able to describe that phenomenon is what I'm asking.
Looping.
Looping, okay. So this looping thing is looping, right? So you came
Mhm.
to like basically you did everything that you needed to do to fit the map like to the confines or the conditions that are set for you. It needs to be a dual poled or bipoled, right? Two poled. One pole doesn't work, and the fact that we have information regarding, you know, the distance between the North Pole to the South Pole, which is ten
Yeah.
thousand
So if
and
I
eight
spent.
hundred.
Go ahead.
Uh, what's that?
Yeah, I just had to pause the video. I was getting something queued up here.
Okay. Yeah. So what I'm saying is that so based on the criteria that you had to work around with, you came up with this stereographic map, right? Which fits like the 10,800 and the equator. Even though it looks distorted, it is still what 24,900
Hmm.
nautical miles around. So based on all that, it had to come to that shape. Is what I'm understanding. It had to, but no choice but to come to that shape because only that shape can match that criteria. So because of that, you logically concluded that there must be some kind of a looping thing that is occurring, right, from north to south, right? Because when you go further north enough, like above where that where I see, let's say Alaska and Russia, if you go further up north, it must loop around, and then if you go east to the Hawaii or the west of Hawaii, you're gonna loop around to Australia more or less, correct?
Yeah, it's all actually just drawing straight lines between points. This is a 2D, two scale projection of the coordinate system. So here what I did is here's the equator, and we're going from the prime meridian 180 degrees west, 180 degrees east. This is the 21,600 nautical miles here at the equator, and then from the data that comes from the coordinate system, each one of these latitudes, this is their actual length to scale, right, going up to the North Pole, and this is their actual length to scale going down to the South Pole. And so this is a straight on to scale projection of the coordinate system here.
I
And
see.
so
So it's a diamond shape, basically, because like from the top of the pyramid, let's just call it, to the bottom part of the lower pyramid, that is 10,800 nautical miles, correct?
yes.
Okay, and then to side, you have double that distance for whatever the measurement that is given to you. So if you made a 2D representation of that into a coordinate system, it would be that shape without the map.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. And so here's the interesting thing. So the North Pole and South Pole we know are separated by 10,800 nautical miles, right? So there is no looping between the north and the south, but 180 degrees west and 180 degrees east are actually the same point,
Okay. Yes.
right? So 180 degrees would be the outside border. Anywhere out here, this is 180 degrees west. Anywhere out here is 180 degrees east. But we know that the distance between these 2 points is like nothing, right? So
Okay.
this side of the coordinate system actually touches this side of the coordinate system. If you were out here in Hawaii and you just walked, swam a few a few swims, you would also be over here based on the coordinate system.
Okay.
All right. If you had a GPS thing that you were swimming with, it would tell you, okay, you went from 180 degrees west to now all of a sudden you're 180 degrees east. You just
Okay.
crossed the international date line.
Hmm.
All right, and this is all flat plane. This isn't balls in space type stuff. So you just sort of have to understand when you take a look at something like this that well, this could only happen in a virtual reality. This wouldn't happen in an atomistic Big Bang world, right?
Hmm.
This could only happen in a virtual world. Now here's a spoiler alert. You want to see what this projects as three-dimensionally?
If you'd like to show us, I'm here to try to learn as much as possible. Go ahead.
All right. So if we do this three-dimensionally, and this is the equator down here, and then this is 10 degrees, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and then 90 being the point up here. So if you project this to scale, it actually turns into a cone. Here is the 3D projection of the coordinate system. Right, this is the equator. This is
The red space is the equator.
the red
Yeah.
space is
Okay.
the equator. 10 degrees north. Each one of these is based off of its circumference. Right, and this was done
Okay.
to scale. And then all the latitudes are spaced evenly, 600 nautical miles, 600 nautical miles. Each one of these are spaced to scale. And so when you lay this all out here, it does not project to a sphere. I was shocked too, but when I started looking at the data in the coordinate system, I knew that as soon as I started plotting this, that it was not going to plot to a sphere.
Hmm.
Right, so Earth is actually a bicone. If you think that we live on a 3D version of it,
Mm.
and here's some of the irrationality to it. If let's go back before I put that circle
And
up.
this is basically refuting the globe model. Is what
Absolutely.
it comes on. Okay. Yeah.
So people that do believe that they're on a spinning ball, according to the coordinate system, they're actually on a spinning bicone.
Hmm.
Bicone.
Which is much more fantastic, place to be than a ball.
Yeah, could you imagine going skiing at the North Pole? All all the slopes around you, everything's 57 degrees down. So just showing how this is irrational in certain ways. I'm going to project a circle here where I went from the center point here all the way up to 90 degrees north, and you can see that the circle that's made out here, like, it doesn't match the equator whatsoever. Right? This
Hmm.
all I did is drag a circle from this point up to here, and
Yeah,
this
yeah, I
is
understand. Yeah, like because like the equator to the top is actually bigger, so like it can only fit into a sphere in the way that you have presented, or you can put it the other way where the equator actually fit into the sphere, then the north pole would protrude outward. So maybe Neil deGrasse Tyson is correct. This is a pear shape. I can see the pear shape of what's going on over here.
well, it's biconal. It's two cones, and
Mhm.
so Jaren's going to say that if he sees a 24-hour sun, that he's down here upside down on a cone, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, the Earth is not a sphere, then Earth must be a cone, right? So that's the new headlines. Earth is a cone, right?
Yeah. We're gonna be pushing that a bunch because it's simple. Anybody can sit down, do it themselves, just to scale, plot out the coordinate system, and
This is a,
if you
I'm
try
sorry.
to
Go ahead.
project it three-dimensionally, you'll end up with this bicone, and if you do it two-dimensionally, you'll end up with that diamond that I showed you.
Hmm. Hmm. But maybe this is a good segue to having that the final experiment conversation. If you are done with this presentation.
Yeah, I can be wrapped up with that part.
Okay.
We do need to talk about upward rising and all that kind of stuff
Yeah, yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah. Of course. Don't you worry that I'm not going to go anywhere without talking about the upward rising
All right.
Earth. But I think that's good to save for the last section of the conversation.
Yeah.
But if you have anything more that you want to present here, go ahead, and then definitely we'll need to touch on the final experiment and all that that it goes with that. So
Yeah. So
go ahead, take us. Yeah, go ahead.
as far as the final experiment is concerned, I just want to show you a couple things. Here's a shot of Union Glacier Camp, and so if you look in Google Earth and you actually get your orientation as far as which direction a person would be looking, right here, and you can use these signs, you'll see that you're you're facing pretty much south, maybe a little bit southwest. But
Okay, I mean I can't see the writings on the signs myself, but I'll just take your word for it that when we are looking at the sign and that the sun is right behind you, we're looking directly south. Okay.
yeah, well, you if you use here's Union Glacier from Google Earth,
Yep.
and so they set up their camp in this area here,
Yep. Yep.
and a lot of their footage that you'll see there is you'll see these mountains
Hmm.
like in a picture like this,
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
So then from that you can see that you're looking south here, and obviously the sun is to the south here, but I think there's more incredible ways to actually prove that they're going to see a 24-hour sun when they go there. And have you looked
Okay.
at the total solar eclipse of December 4th,
I saw
2021?
some video. Yeah, I saw videos of that of people down at Union Glacier Camp on the runway filming it. But beyond that, I didn't really see more. So, but I would like to know what you picked up on from this video.
Yeah, well, all right. So you'll have somebody that will say it's fake because this is 360-degree footage. So you will be able to find a seam somewhere, but it's 8K 360, and all of these people, all right, every single one of these cameras, all these people were here to record this and publish their images, and everything corroborates each other. And
Hmm.
so they get into this situation here. They're looking. We're gonna have to go look and see which direction they are facing here. But you can see these mountains. This
Yep.
is to the south over here, right?
Okay. There
And
were mountains to the north though too. So how do we know that that's not the mountains to the north?
all right, I'll show you from Stellarium
Okay.
where the eclipse is taking place. You can actually see that, like the stars, as it's starting to darken here. You can see
Hmm.
some of the stars coming out. These
Yep.
are going to be like the wandering stars, like Jupiter, Venus, those types of stars, because they're
Hmm.
brighter.
Hmm.
And that can also be tracked within Stellarium as well. But so this whole area, like to fake something like this, if we go back a couple clicks here, we went from having shadows. You see all these shadows
Yep.
being
Yep.
cast,
Hmm.
and then we're going into totality, and watch these. There we go. There's shadows are gone, right? And this is the totality that's starting to take place here.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I'm going to have to do a quick reshare for you to see the stellarium.
Okay.
So let's rewind the clock here. This is December 4th, 2021. And so here's due south right here.
Where are we located? Are we at Union Glacier camp here?
Yes, we are. I'll show
Okay.
you.
Yep.
So we're clicked here, and it's giving us 79 degrees south,
Yep.
38.
Yep.
So
Yep. That's right. Yep.
and so we are looking
Close enough.
due
Yep.
south right now.
Hmm.
Let me rewind the sun a little bit. I want to just show you.
Okay. So are you going backwards or forwards right now?
I'm going backwards. I want to show
Okay.
you.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I,
Okay.
I want to take it back so that we see when it's facing west.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So here the sun is facing west. Now we're going to start running it forwards.
Hmm.
This red line right here is the ecliptic. Um,
Hmm.
the sun's always going to be on that ecliptic. So you can see now we've passed southwest. Here's south coming. We can start to see only in stellarium the shadow of the moon. You wouldn't see it in real life.
Hmm.
But as it goes past south here without ever having gone below the horizon. Here comes, there, right there is our totality,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
that is just past southeast, but we were able to observe the sun staying in the sky
Right.
without going below the horizon, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that is proof right there that when you link that up with, I'm going to go back to our window. All right, so here is the here's that footage again, right? And we looked at it from Solarium and saw that this is just southeast.
Okay.
All right, so this is really solid proof
Yeah.
of a never setting sun, right?
Right. It's going right over the south. I mean,
Yeah,
and from right to left, as
right.
we would expect. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what
I
I'm
mean,
expecting.
I mean, I don't disagree. I mean, that's what Z and I have been talking about is that the 24-hour sun in Antarctica is a natural phenomenon. How that is actually working on the AE map is a mystery to me. And again, I'm not married to any kind of a map, but and certainly I would have to, look into the stereographic map a little bit more on my own time and just try to I like to just try to break it, like you take something and then you just do everything that you possibly can to, debunk it. And I mean, that's how we became quote unquote a flat earther anyways, and you just try to take that claim and be like, okay, no, this is the information that I'm going to look at. And then I'm going to look at every possible way in which that this information is true or not true. Right. So truth does not shy away from any kind of uh, I don't know, like scrutiny, right? And we
Yeah,
should be, of course, open with the information that we share. And then, of course, if we are off or inaccurate, we can correct the record along the way. None of us hit 1,000, having arrived here, right? Like we
nope,
are not perfect in any way. So I think it's good to just humble ourselves the best that we can, and then stick to the truth that we know, but also stand for the truth that we do know, right? So,
absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, it
yeah, go
it
ahead.
it just compiles and compiles on each other, where we have these predicted paths of the sun. We want the Will Duffys, the Gerrans to go out there with a theodolite, with a sextant to actually take these headings. We want to know the altitude and azimuth because we have a prediction on a plane, all right, that we want to test.
Okay. What is that prediction? Maybe you just like let it out, and then maybe somebody will catch it, and then they will pass that information along.
Yeah, well, it's I mean it's right here. Here's December 4th. So if you December 14th coming up, that this is when they're going to be there. If you just screen record this, it's got the hundredth of a degree per second, the azimuth, the altitude. This is the predicted path around the observer.
Okay.
All right, all right
Well, let me
without
ask you a
its
quick question.
yeah.
Like, if you were going down to Antarctica, and I'm not even talking about with Will Duffy's ticket or anything, but you were able to magically get $31,500. There's no, terms of services. You're going to go down there. First of all, would you go? Would you go if you just got a free ticket and they said, okay, like there are no conditions. You do whatever you want. You got 4 days there. Would you go?
It's I'm not really interested in that. I grew up in Wisconsin and I hate the cold. Like I wouldn't just subject myself to go to the cold to see this when I can actually watch it in 8K in the comfort of
Okay.
my own house
But you're
and see
doing
it that way.
you're going to be doing humanity a big service, by going. Okay, I mean, you're doing God's work. Okay, okay. Let's just say you are going. You're forced to go at gunpoint, and you're going to go. Okay. Now, what would be the thing for you to do to retrieve as much pertinent data? I would say, like the most important data that would be really you know the most important in your mind. So, what would you do, and how would you go about doing that? Just as a little thought experiment, right?
There are, I don't know the name of it, but in our Telegram group, we have a person, Zwars, that's posted it that they have sun recorders where they use like a glass ball inside of a cradle, and then that picks up the sun and it projects it through the ball onto a graph that's like built. It's sort of like a equatorial sundial in a way,
Okay. Okay.
and then it just projects the light out on the graph and it maps it. It'll tell you
Okay.
the exact path, right?
Okay. So it's a device that has to be leveled, right? Because it has to be leveled. So once you have that all set up, basically whatever angle in which the sunlight is hitting this, I don't know. I guess it's some kind of domed object or it's
Like a
contained
like a
object.
glass ball,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
it
Like a glass ball.
focuses the light through it. Yeah.
Okay, and then it hits like some kind of a detector, and then it will like record the position of that sun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's very good. I mean, that's essentially what this thing is doing right here. Like it would map it out, like and comparing this data to that data would be quite interesting.
Well, and the other thing you could do is set up an equatorial mount that you program in these coordinates, right, and it'll give you the azimuth, the altitude, and see whether or not it tracks to the sun perfectly. So,
Okay.
a, a two-axis gimbal only works on a flat plane. If you were on a globe, you would have to have a three-axis gimbal to actually track the sun and keep it in position.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then sextant, how would you like? You're saying that whomever that might be going may be wanting to take a sextant with them. So how would you use the sextant, and what kind of information are you looking? Because like basically, sextant is just it's like the same thing that we're just talking about, but it's just for the individual, the person, to observe the angle of the sun, right, and just jot down that data, right?
yeah, you
Okay.
set up your baseline, and then when you line up to whatever luminary it is you're sighting to, it'll tell you your elevation angle.
Right. Right.
Uh,
Okay. All right, and what are your thoughts on the whole Will Duffy, the final experiment? I mean, I'm sure you talked about it before with Will Duffy, but let it be known to our audiences that what is your position on the whole thing?
False dichotomy, part of a New World Order psyop to try
Okay.
to straw man a false dichotomy. It's an observation, and yeah, it doesn't prove that we're on a ball upside down antipodal. It proves that we're on a two pole stereographic plane. Right, that's what it proves.
Yeah,
Just one.
so if anybody says that if they see the 24-hour sun, the Earth cannot possibly be flat, would you agree or disagree with that statement?
No, it's they are going to see the 24-hour sun on a flat plane.
Okay.
That is what's going to happen.
Right, but according to so like, do you think there's any kind of like this is the claim that I made, and I may be wrong about it. So maybe this is my opinion, but my contention is that if I go, let's say Will Duffy asked me that, hey, Nachiketa, would you like to go to Antarctica? I'm going to provide you a free ticket to go to Antarctica for the final experiment, and then if I accept the ticket to go to Antarctica on Will Duffy's dime, then I have more or less accepted the terms and conditions of the TFE. E. Would you agree with that? Or is it just, let's just go anyways, even if I'm going to be a forever flat earther and just collect data. And then, I would have to admit that I saw a 24-hour sun, but I don't have to admit to the fact that the Earth is a globe.
Yeah,
Do you understand the question?
yeah, sort of. Our position is that the globe people have made absolutely no effort to put forth a model that predicts the altitude and azimuth of the sun. Same with the pressurized pizza domers. They haven't put forth any models that would predict the path of the sun. The only models that have predictions for that are the ones that have the sun rising from Earth and setting into Earth, which we have claimed all of them as proof of being in a stereographic virtual reality, because nobody else makes the claim of the luminaries rising from Earth and setting into Earth, nor would they have an explanation for how it's possible, right?
Okay, let me ask you the question in a different way. I think I'm not sure if you fully followed what I was saying. So what I'm saying is that if Will Duffy is talking about, like, if he has already set the conditions of the TFE, as you and I can both agree that it is a false dichotomy, right? It's a false
Yeah.
dichotomy. So there is no winning there in a false dichotomy. Either way you go, it's a false, end of the road. So if I or you or anyone accepting that ticket, you are essentially participating in a false dichotomy, is basically the question I'm asking.
Yeah, well, I've been telling them over and over and over again that it's a false dichotomy. We've got the explanation for it, but nobody wants to hear it. Nobody wants to listen. You're the first person that's actually taken the time to listen a little bit here, and that's great. I wish there were more people that would actually just take a look at it, because the evidence is there. It does
Yeah.
exist, right?
Well,
I
I
mean,
think there's a
take
yeah.
take a
Go
look
ahead.
at how does a pressurized pizza domer or a heliocentrist explain things like this, like the sun rising from below the clouds? Have you
Yeah. Well, I mean,
So
well,
here's the video I took. As you can see,
have you seen this?
not this one, but I've seen something similar. But yeah, go ahead. Go ahead and play the video, and then we can talk about it.
Yeah. So this is Matt Long.
rising through
He was one of the
clouds.
pressurized pizza domers,
Now, if the sun is 93 million,
and he was with David Weiss at that Greg Locke and Dean Odell debate thing. Do you remember that? So, long time ago, he took a flight and he's recording with a P900, the sun below the airplane, right? Rising from the clouds, coming up through the clouds. And that's just one footage. Here's another amazing footage. Started compiling these. And so every one of these types of footages are proof of the sun actually being able to be below airplanes, below the clouds. And once again, the only explanation for that would be virtual reality. And nobody else could come up with any other explanation. And watch as this sun starts peeking up here. It's horizon's way up here. It's breaking through the edge of that cloud down there. And this is long extended footage. And you can see that the sunlight hasn't even really started to illuminate these clouds here. It's still sort of very side on as it's coming up through the clouds there.
Yep.
And it's not until it gets enough of its diameter up above something that it actually starts to cast shadows. So we've got stuff like that. We've got from below, you've got airplanes being underlit on their bellies. Right?
Yep.
We've got things that even Q&P has filmed, as far as they call them chemtrails, right? But here's a Wolfie video where he's actually proving that the sun is below him because he's casting a shadow upwards, up in his cockpit. here comes some of these. It's like they call it a chemtrail, but the shadow is actually being projected up, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah. Up on the
right,
cloud. Yeah, yeah.
and there's a lot of this. I don't know. Have you studied this?
I mean, I didn't study this, but I've seen it. Yeah.
All right. So what do you say the explanation for the shadow being
I
cast upwards is?
I agree with you. I don't disagree with you.
Okay. Yeah. I mean this. It's there's the sun. There's the trail, and then there's the shadow up above.
Yeah. So it has to be in between that trail. The sun has to be in between that trail and the ground.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
We've got, of course, we've got the clouds behind the sun, but we've also got footage of planes that are
Wow.
interacting with the sun. Right? They're
Yeah.
popping out, and you can see like you'll see that like a jet trail thing,
Yeah. Yeah. That's fascinating. That's absolutely fascinating.
and like this
I
this
wonder what the perspective is from what where they are at.
yeah. So obviously from the airplane, they're going to have the correct azimuth and altitude to the sun, but because they have a larger circle of sight, because they're higher, it's going to look farther away than it does here in this shot.
Yeah, but what's interesting is that according to the perspective of the camera that is picking up on this, is that the airplane is actually interacting with the sun,
Yes,
physically speaking. That is
yes,
actually quite crazy to me, like how that is possible, you know?
yep. I've recorded this a number of times. I know Q has recorded this a number of times. So these are the evidences. These are the things that we point to. Here's the sun rising from the ground. Here's watch this setting into the ground. You can see that it's just this area right here that's locally illuminated. When the camera zooms back out, you can see that it was only just this one little spot where the sun was setting right there.
Hmm.
We've got a lot of this footage, and we're just gonna keep putting it out there. We're just gonna keep sharing it with everybody. Look, as this.
I am in agreement with you that the sun rises and sets. Okay, so there's no pushback on my side in regards to that. How that is, what that is beyond my comprehension. That's above my pay grade. But it's clear to me that the sun is not circling around above your head and like turning into a little pinprick and disappearing because it's too far away. I used to assume that that was the case because I was a flat earther, thinking about the AE map and the circling sun for 9+ years, right? But I never thought too much into it because I already assumed the people who are the prominent, flat Earth channels had looked into it, and I just like accepted by their word. I was like, wow, they must have looked into it, just like But that was my mistake, right? So I am much more guarded nowadays based on any information, and I really want to scrutinize all information as much as possible. Okay. So yeah, so I'm in agreement with about the sun. What it's doing, it's coming out of the ground, it's setting into the ground. It does weird things. Clouds behind the sun, airplanes going through the sun. It's shining shit underneath. Okay, wow, that's really crazy. But at the same time, when you see it like enough, you're just like, okay, I guess that's what it is. So
Nope.
shall we continue on with the conversation? Is there anything else that you would like to present before we start talking about the quote unquote gravitas?
Yeah. No. Let's go ahead and get into this motion vector type stuff.
Sure. So, do you believe that gravity exists? Let me ask you that.
No. No. Not
Okay.
that a mass is attracting other mass. No.
Okay. But you agree that the phenomena of gravitas exists.
I know that when you drop something, that there's an acceleration formula, in that it will hit a terminal velocity dependent on its surface area, weight and surface area, drag coefficient.
What does it mean? Can you translate that into plain English?
Um, let's let's. I like having graphics to work off of, but
Okay.
where is? Let's see the force is mass and acceleration. So, no, I know what I was looking for. It's the Wikipedia on terminal velocity. So this sort of spells it out here. Of course, it's got the typical globe obfuscation to it. But terminal velocity is the maximum of speed attainable by an object as it falls through a fluid, air, the most common example. It is reached when the sum of the drag force and the buoyancy is equal to the downward force of gravity. Now, I don't think gravity is a force. I think it's a made-up thing for the actual formula of what acceleration is, because I believe that we're in a virtual reality, and that a speed was determined for how fast something will fall, and that there's more factors involved than that. It also has to do with how much drag there is. So the amount of surface area that something has related to its weight is also going to have what they're going to call a buoyancy effect.
Yeah,
Sort
you're
of,
basically talking about RDD. Yeah, relative density disequilibrium is the common terminology. A lot of the flat earthers are using to explain this phenomenon of gravitas.
yeah. So one of the things I want to point out, I've heard you try to connect stationary earthers to like what globers believe in, and I just want to point out that what I'm saying is a static plane with the actual formulas for weight, uh, which is based on a density, which is based on a volume, which is that there's a formula applied to something that sets how fast it's going to fall until it gets to its terminal velocity, which is based on its drag coefficient. That there's it's not a gravity, it's not a pulling down, it's not a movement. It's just simply the formula for how fast something will drop, what its terminal velocity is before it hits the ground.
Yeah, so I mean, like another way of putting it is that if you have a density gradient, for example, you've seen water with oil, and then you can have different layers of like a buoyant or dense material, and then you can drop different objects within that container, right? With the density gradient is colored out to like water and green and blue and whatever. So if you drop a piece of metal through this density gradient, it drops all the way to the bottom. And then if you have like, I don't know, a cherry, then it goes somewhere in the middle. And then if you have a cork, then it floats at the top. So if a material is more dense, it just simply drops because that's what it does. That is the nature of that reality, and that is what we call gravitas, correct?
I don't call it gravitas. So
I mean, it's a
density.
word. Is gravitas is a word. It's not different. It's not the same as gravity. Gravitas is the phenomenon of objects being dropping to the ground. That's what gravitas is.
Okay, it sounds Latin to me. Is it Latin?
It's irrelevant whether it's Latin or Greek. If you agree with the terminology of you accepting that as just a phenomenon and it's a word to describe that phenomenon, then that's all we have to go by. Or what,
I,
what would you rather say? Like
falling, falling.
falling? Okay. Okay. So our position is that the Earth is moving upwards, right?
Your position.
Yes, that's my position. That is
Yes.
our position of the upward vectors. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yep.
obviously I speak for myself, but I've been tempered in the ways of the upward vectors in a way. So the enough upward vectors are here to listen to me and to correct my speech if I go down the wrong hole. Let's just say so. What the upward vector position is that obviously the Earth is moving upward, and because the Earth is moving upward, uh, it is what we call, like what we say, that the like weight is resistance to motion, and weight is resistance to motion, and buoyancy is also resistance to motion. Now, everything like I described before, there's no such thing as a pulling force. Pulling is merely semantics, but everything is pushing. Okay, so like do you know how an accelerometer works, Jason?
I do. I even have some tabs up here. Do you know that, like your cell phone is an accelerometer?
Yes, your cell phone
Yeah.
has an accelerometer. Exactly. That's one of the ways in which accelerometer is detecting acceleration, because there are two objects. One is more or less fixed, and other one is more or less, it's they're both fixed, but like one is able to move, or other one is not able to move, and depending on the change of distance between the blue object and the green objects, the blue object and the green objects, is that it is registering quote unquote acceleration. Would
Well,
you agree?
capacitance change. So because of the movement, all of a sudden the resistance, the ohms changes, and they can measure
Hmm.
that,
Yep.
and so they can tell if it is being moved in any direction if you set it up in a three-axis way.
Mhm. It can measure in any direction except down.
Um, you're talking about free fall. You're talking
Yeah.
about free fall, right?
Yeah. Free fall, it does not register any quote unquote acceleration.
Yeah, free fall is a special one-off, like special pleading case because, I mean, how much of your life have you actually spent in free fall?
Uh, Very little,
Yeah.
very very little.
So it's free fall is a special pleading case because most of your life has been spent not in free fall, right?
Yeah, and so what?
Well, why would we talk about free fall if it's the most special pleading case of all?
Yeah, but like if there's a change in, okay, so like this accelerometer, right, is changing, or like it is, there's a disturbance, right, with the blue object, right, and
Mm.
because of that disturbance, it picks up the change in motion, and that's what it registers into whatever device, a phone or a computer or whatever device is there, and that's what is detecting quote unquote acceleration. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it measures the acceleration, but when it's in free fall, there's no way to measure that acceleration
Why not?
because how would you be able to put a scale underneath something that's at free fall?
It doesn't
And
need a scale. These objects don't need a scale underneath it. They still register the acceleration regardless. So, your position being a stationary flat earther, right? Your position is that it's stationary and things go down. So you believe that objects accelerate to the ground.
mhm, until they hit terminal velocity, or if they're in a
Okay.
vacuum, right?
Okay, but it goes from zero to terminal velocity. That's an acceleration.
Hmm.
So, like, if I have this water bottle and then I drop it, it's not going to hit terminal velocity before it reaches the ground because I'm not high enough.
Right.
Okay, so there is an acceleration according to your mind.
Hmm.
Okay, so why does it not register that acceleration going down?
Because it's in free fall, and there's the entire
That, that
frame.
is that is
bec-
special pleading, though. That is special pleading.
Yeah,
It,
that's what I'm saying. Like, this is the only instance that you can come across where you're not getting the measurement. What you have to have is something outside of that reference frame measuring it. So you would need to have like a radar gun, somebody standing on the side pointing a radar gun at something that's falling, and that'll tell you what speed it's falling at, right? It has to be outside of the reference frame in order to be measuring it, because you can't put a scale under something that's falling and measure its weight.
No, because nothing weighs anything when it's falling. The scale will not register anything. An elephant and myself on a free fall, quote unquote free fall, will weigh equally zero.
Yeah, during free fall until it hits a stationary object, and then all of a
Yeah,
sudden
then
its
we
mass
then we
is.
splatter. Yeah, then we splatter.
Yeah, so the actual density and buoyancy is always there. It's just immeasurable in the free fall state from that same reference frame.
Buoyancy disappears when it's at free fall, just the same as weight. It doesn't exist at all during free fall. Okay, so what that means is that buoyancy is actually a result of the resistance to motion. So, like this water bottle that I have, like, there's nothing in here, but the water bottle that I have in here, because the water this water bottle is connected to my hand, and I am moving upward, and this water bottle is also moving upward. The water will remain level. It will sit at the bottom. So when I drop it, the ideal being that if I move this water bottle in any direction, it displaces the water and the air inside. Of course, the water bottle itself is made out of steel, so it's not going to displace, but the water bottle or the water and the air inside in any direction is going to be displaced. You cannot move this in any direction except down. When you drop it downwards, then this water is not displaced. Okay, and everybody can 100% agree that this water does not displace. It remains at the bottom and still do so all the way until it reaches the ground. Of course, when the water bottle hits the ground, it displaces. Something else is actually happening. So the question then becomes, why is it doing that? Right? Now, the special pleading argument is true that you're already accepting the fact that it is special when it's going down, when it should not be when you are speaking about downward acceleration, because in any acceleration, there should be displacement. Your position is not correct according to our perspective, because there should be some kind of a displacement when there is no displacement at all. And the displacement is not there because in reality, this water bottle sitting on this table is moving upwards with this table, with myself, with everybody. But when it is dropped from this table, it is merely decelerating. There's an appearance of falling to the ground, no different from, let's say, you and I are driving. You and I are driving in a car side by side, and then I remain at 100 miles an hour, but you are decreasing in speed, and then you go to 90 miles an hour, 80 miles an hour. And when I look at you, I look like I was like, oh, I thought we were both going 100 miles an hour. But in reality, I remain going at 100 miles an hour, but you have decreased in speed. This is what this is doing. This water bottle is decreasing in motion, not acceleration. It's losing velocity, and that's why the water inside the bottle does not displace. Okay.
All right,
Do
so
you have something to present?
yeah, I've got some 3D models here that we can use just for everybody to relate to. I'll point to some things here. If you have a person standing on a flat plane and he's holding a bowling ball and a feather out in his hand right here, right? They have different masses and they have different surface areas. Yeah. So if you drop either one of these things, they are going to displace things differently. So the large surface area of the feather, and it's lightweight, it's going to experience buoyancy as it's falling through the air, right?
Okay.
And the ball, because of its mass, and it's just going to fall a lot faster. So
But not in a vacuum. I mean, we talked about this before, but if they're both inside a vacuum, they fall at the same speed, correct?
Exactly, because it doesn't have the air there, the pressure
Yeah.
to create the buoyant effect.
Yeah, I agree. Like
The air has been
the
removed.
yeah, the air is the thing because the obviously the bowling ball is going to cut right through the air, but the feather is not going to be able to do so. So the pressure gradient, right, in the surface of on the surface of the Earth and also in the ocean is all due to the motion of the Earth as well, because the thicker layer of air at the bottom, because air has its own density scale, just like no different from, let's say, helium, whatever stuff that they may be made out of. We do identify oxygen and helium and different like material, and they do exist. We do know that helium exists. Now we can argue about whether that is like atoms in there with electrons and neutrons. We're not here to talk about that. We are here to just define that there are different objects and different materials that actually exist, and they have a different density gradient to them. But as the motion of the earth is going upward, you're going to have a natural density gradient of the air, thicker at the air at the bottom, as you have shown in the pressure gradient of the air. And then as you go up, you're going to have lighter and lighter air going up. But ocean is the same. Like in the opposite way, you have lighter or less pressure on the surface of the ocean. But if you go deeper and deeper into the ocean, there's going to be more pressure because all that weight of top of the earth is like crushing down on whatever the object, but that is all due to the motion of the earth and cannot possibly be because of the downward acceleration. It can only be due to the upward constant motion of the earth.
All right,
Okay.
so there's a huge variable here. Are you saying that this is all happening inside of a pressurized pizza dome?
Well, I can. This is what I will say about the pressurized pizza dome, or whatever it might be. I believe that there must be a containment field of some kind. I cannot say it's like a dome or like a crystalline object or whatever. But the reason why I say that there must be some kind of a containment field is that there is well, it's just like the ocean is contained within like a pool, or the water is contained in a pool. It's a container. Air exists, and we experience a pressure gradient of the air. So I presume, and I don't know 100%, but I presume that there must be some kind of a containment in order to maintain that pressure gradient of the air.
But how could you have a pressure gradient if you had containment? Because as you probably know, have you ever had a tire have different pressures within it? Once you've filled it to a certain pressure, it doesn't have gradients within it. It's 35
Well,
psi or
yeah. That's inside a tire, and I do understand what you're talking about. But we're talking about a very large surface, and then as the Earth is rising up, like you're going to have the pressure gradient that we know that exists. We know that there's a pressure gradient that exists. So the question then being is that could it be that nothing is up there, right? And then all this air is just merely being pushed upwards, and then it's just a natural phenomenon for air to, because of the upward movement. I don't know. Like I said, I'm like, I just presume that there is some kind of a containment because, like where, how is the air be able to contain, you know?
well,
Like
see,
same as the ocean. One more thing, like when you look at the ocean, we say, okay, the ocean is contained by the land, right? The ocean is contained by the lands, right? Yeah, the land masses contain the ocean, correct?
yeah, well, on the virtual reality, you've got sea level, and then you've got land that's above sea level. That's
Okay,
right.
but
The
but
contain
but
the can
you can go to the ocean and you can touch it. You can get on a boat. If you go inside the ocean, you're gonna be virtually drowning in the water. You know,
Yeah, so the pressure gradient really doesn't work inside an enclosed container.
but it does. It does work because like already in the ocean there's a pressure gradient. You agree that there is a pressure gradient in the ocean, yes?
Yeah, every 10 meters it doubles. It's
Sure. Okay. Whatever
yeah,
it might be, but there's a pressure gradient in the ocean, and the ocean is in a contained system.
yeah, but any sort of vessel, like a pressure cooker, a tire, anything that you inflate, inner tube, all these things, they only have one pressure inside of them. There's no
But
gradient
I don't.
of
But
pressure.
I wouldn't equate the Earth and the environment in which that we're living with a tire. I completely understand what you mean, and then like it wouldn't work in a tire or a pressure cooker or whatever. But in a very large system, I but like I said, like I'm not 100% on this. I just presume that there must be some kind of a containment field, just like the ocean is contained. The air must be also contained somehow, whether it's like electromagnetism or some kind of like uh, uh, I don't know, like a shielding, or maybe there is a crystalline thing that's up there. I don't know, but I just presume that there's a way to contain that thing. But that's not a gotcha thing for me because that's neither really here nor there in terms of the upward vector conversation. Because really, the upward vector conversation, we're trying to get away from special pleading because actually it should not be special pleading. Special pleading is a logical fallacy. It's not something that you fall back on and say, well, that's special, and we're just going to accept it as special. I'm not going to accept that, and nobody else who is logical minded will accept that as, oh, okay, it's special pleading because down is special compared to any other direction. Because in our position, that there is an orientation to the earth, and the orientation is upwards, right? That's what makes everything level, and that's why we have a flat, quote unquote, flat surfaces, because it's actually level, because it's the upward vector that splays out that water. Because what water does in a zero gravity environment, like those vomit comets, the parabolic airplanes, you can actually experience 0 g in a contained environment, and the water will turn into a sphere. And when we look at like slow motion videos of water in the rainfall, it turns into a sphere. When we drop water from a building in a container, right, and then with a GoPro on it, we'll see that the water turns into a perfect sphere. There's no gravity, no. So like, and then once it reaches the ground, it turns into its regular form because it is the motion of the upward motion of the Earth is actually giving it its orientation. It's giving it the buoyancy. It's giving everything its weight. So that's why we are very adamant about talking about this, because this is another one of those shadow band thing. And then, we are turned into kind of like dumb, upward rising people because we believe the earth is a upward rising earth. But when all demonstration and experimentations is actually showing that weight and buoyancy is resistance to that motion is upwards. And it debunks both the stationary flat earth model, and it also debunks the globe, because globe cannot possibly be constantly expanding, otherwise it would just explode. So, I mean, to me, there's no possible way to, once people see it for what it is, there's no way to get away from it. There's just no way.
Yeah, there are ways to get away from it. Both the globe's gravity and the falling, the pulling down or whatever, and the upward rising are both motions, and this can all be done from an absolutely static frame in a virtual reality. Where if you give all the elements, you know about the periodic table of elements, right?
Yes, I am aware of it.
And how it's built off of like the mass, right? The mass of an object, so the amount, the weight of something per cubic volume is
Yeah.
how the elements are based, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Different
if
density. Yeah, different objects, different material have different density.
yeah, so the creator just assigned properties of weight to different elements here, and based on the amount of it you have in volume, that'll tell you the weight of it. So then the
Weight
human
and mass
has
is different, right? I'm sorry, Jason. Jason, the weight and mass are different. Weight is the resistance to motion. So when different, like I can have gold or steel or a feather, and it's all falling at a free fall. None of it weighs anything, even if it's made of different material. Nothing weighs anything.
At at
Nothing
free
will register.
at free fall, that's the special pleating. So that's
That is,
the
you admit to the fact that that is special pleading, which is kind of annoying because like it shouldn't be special pleading, you
the
know?
free fall. How much of your life have you spent at free fall?
Very little. But what does it matter? How much of my life have I spent on free fall? Because
How
you know
much of
what?
your life have you not spent at free fall?
Most of it, 99.99% of it.
So then, if we're going to talk about free fall, it's special pleading. Same with vacuum chambers. If you're going to talk about vacuum chambers, how much of your life have you spent in a vacuum chamber?
Okay, so this is a little bit of a I'm going to say it, but I think this is a little bit of a misrepresentation because let me tell you why. Like I don't need to spend any time in a vacuum chamber to understand how vacuum chambers work. I don't need to live my life in a free fall to understand what free fall is. Free fall is you and I can understand is free fall, but just because I didn't spend my life in a free fall, we know what objects do in a free fall. We know what objects do in a vacuum. You know, obviously we were talking about like a vacuum, a man-made vacuum, not the space vacuum or absolute vacuum. We're talking about like a vacuum that we can actually create, and we can create certain amount of vacuum, right? And
Hmm.
like if you have a box and then you took all the air out and turned it into a vacuum, you will not be able to fly a GoPro inside of that. Not a GoPro, like
Yeah,
what do you
drone,
call it? Like a
a
drone. Yeah,
drone.
you can't. Yeah, you cannot fly a drone because there's nothing. It's just like when you go up high enough, there's no pressure. There's no pressure inside. There's nothing to push off of anymore, right?
You can't launch a rocket
Yeah,
into a vacuum. None of that stuff.
yeah,
I
yeah. So
agree.
I don't need to live in that vacuum. I can create that vacuum and see how objects are like, responding or, observe how things are working. I don't have to live in a free fall. I can see that objects are functioning a particular way in a free fall,
Yeah.
right?
So let me show you an example here of. All right. You see this graphic here?
Yes. I see. The guy with the bowling ball and a feather, isn't that the same one?
Oh no, I gotta reshare. I'm just showing it. See this one
Yeah.
now?
Yeah, yeah.
Does this look like it's moving to you?
No.
No, not until I turn the background on, right? Because
Okay.
because now with the background, you can see that it's moving. If I turn the background off, right, it looks static, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you know how I did this is I made the pressurized pizza dome going up, but I also
Yeah.
made a camera follow it
Yeah.
at the same pace, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so
So this is
we could
this is
we
you
could
think that the upper rising earthers believe, right? This representation, this visual representation is your conclusion of how the rising earthers actually see this reality. Is this what it is?
well, I've pressed to get better descriptions of what they believe it is, and I haven't gotten anything that helps me see anything else other than this.
Oh man, Jason, I was starting to really like enjoy our conversation, and now I feel a little bit I feel a little bit disrespected at this point, just because
Well, if I turn the
look,
background off, you can't tell if it's moving, right?
I agree. I agree. I mean, and this is a common trope. A lot of the flat earthers, stationary flat earthers say, and they will say one word like parachutes. this dismantles and debunks the upward rising Earth and the clouds. Like what do you think? We're gonna like just like pop our heads into the clouds? Like what are we rising into? So that's a common
So
question, and it's a fair question. It's a fair question. I'm not saying it's not a fair question, but the way I would describe it is that the celestials and the sun and the moon is part of the reality in which we call the Earth environment, or commonly known as the reference frame. And because the reference frame is all moving upwards together, we understand that there is an upward vector because of the various experiments that we have done. But the stars and we don't know what we are rising into. That's the thing, because we have never gone outside the reference frame. So that's the situation.
no, I
Same
know,
with the
but
stationary.
so
Same with yeah. Go
the
ahead.
the point I'm making is if I go with a static camera like this and I turn the background off, you can't tell that this scene
Correct.
is actually rising upwards right
You're
now, right?
right. You're 100% correct, because that's a visual representation of a movement, a change in, like what is visual, and that's a way to know. Just like the same description that I gave you before, that when we were going 100 miles an hour together on the road, your car, my car, and then I look at you, right? And then without looking at the speedometer, right? Like I don't have a speedometer. All I know is I'm going at the same speed. Now, if one of us goes slower or one of us go faster, how would you know without the speedometer who is going faster or who is actually going slower? That's a visual optical kind of illusion that we accept as like, oh, that's the kind of a reference, right? And that's the thing. Like, this is a little bit of a gotcha question, and let me just try to give you a little bit of a, because we've been in a lot of these conversations before with other
Yeah.
people, so this is not something new to us, and I want to be very cordial with you, and I'm not trying to imply that you are trying to do anything in disingenuous, but like people would ask, well, what are we rising into, or what is the mechanism that is causing the Earth to rise? And the simple answer is I don't know. But the same question can be asked in the reverse way for the stationary Earthers. What is the Earth standing on? And they cannot really logically answer that question either,
Well,
because they don't
they
know, because nobody has been outside the reference frame. Go ahead, sir.
yeah, they wouldn't be able to do that, but we actually can give you an idea of what it's on, and you can actually see here that it's suspended in 3D space. It has a width, it has a length, it has a height to it, and it's suspended in 3D space. So why would I build this model here with this plane, with this person, with the ball, with the feather, and why would I put the entire thing into motion and then make a camera follow it to make it appear still when I can actually just build the entire thing off of a static frame?
You are trying to ask me a question that only a God can answer. I will not presume my position to know why God created this reality the way He did, but He did. And I can only say that it is not for me to tell anybody, like, well, why would God do this or do that? Only thing I can do is tell people that this is what God did. God made the Earth level. God made the upward vector. I have no idea why, but maybe that's the best way to create the phenomenon of gravitas, so that we do have an orientation of up or down and stuff like this. That's the only thing I can say about it. But I don't know why God had done it.
All right. So one of the things that I've felt really lost by you on is when you've said that if things weren't rising, that everything would just be floating, right? You've said that, right? I'm not taking that out of context.
Well, yeah, like if we took the upward vector, like let's say the upward vector just completely stopped, right?
Hmm.
Then if I were to try to imagine what would happen at that moment, uh, like all objects which is actually on the ground, that is not bolted onto the ground, it's not connected to the ground, right? Like including loose rocks, loose gravel, everything that you can imagine would continuously go up, because and then it would appear as we're floating above the ground, but actually the ground had stopped rising. So yeah, everything would probably, because we are continuing with our momentum. There's still that momentum of, let's say, 100 miles or 1,000 miles an hour of that constant motion that is giving us that buoyancy, giving us that weight, and then all of a sudden Earth stopped moving upwards. It would stop, and then it appears as if we are floating up, but that is the continuation of the momentum, and then the ground is not meeting up with us. So that's what I imagine would happen. Yes.
Yeah. So just the whole concept of requiring motion in order to have this downward vector force, right, holding things down, that if things weren't in motion, they would be in space. That's the kind of stuff that Glovers say. They say that things would just float around in space. And so when you're saying that if we stop moving upwards, everything would just float, I mean, that sounds like this weightless space thing. Am I wrong?
Well, first of all, I guess to me that would be a bit of a misrepresentation, because I don't believe that we are spinning, and I mean, there's four different motions to talk about in terms of like the globe model, anyways. Right.
Five. Look, if you Google it, there's actually five frames of reference.
Okay. So, I mean, like, like I know about the spinning, I know about the rotation, and I understand about the solar system moving around the galaxy. That's three, right? And then the solar system actually moving away from each other. That's four. And what's the one more?
If you look it up on Google, it's going to say something about motion within a limb of the universe, like a one of the. There's multiple fronds within the
Okay.
spinning.
Okay,
Yeah, it's
let's
just
let's
a
let's say let's go with that. Let's go with the five, which is fine. I mean, like, who cares? Four or
mm,
five, it doesn't matter. But like, all what I don't, I obviously neither of us believe in any of that, right? Like,
mm,
it's not even a thing to speak about. But so whatever they say about so what you're trying to do is like trying to like do a false equivalency. Is that because of the upward rising earthers are claiming that if the Earth stopped rising, we would start floating, and that's what the globers say. And so, thus, the upper rising Earthers are somehow equivalent to, in their logical fallacy, and coming to the similar conclusions as globers, and thus it's basically a false. So, I don't
mm.
think that's a very tenable argument.
Well, I would not expect weightlessness without motion, because we don't measure motion. The accelerometers aren't measuring any motion. The phones sitting on the ground aren't showing us in motion, and so I just expect each property of each element or whatever to be manifested where if it's got a certain amount of volume and a certain amount of weight and a certain amount of air resistance, it's going to fall based on that. That the creator didn't overthink this one, and just made up up and down, and it's pretty intuitive. It's pretty basic. Uh, I wouldn't expect to let go of this bowling ball and for it to just float away, right? It's heavy. I'm holding it. I expect it to fall down to the ground. Air bubble rising through water is going to tell you which direction is up. So spirit levels are always a great way to know which way is up. Plumb lines, all these types of things. The geometry is all there for a stationary fixed plane with things falling based on masses, based on wind resistance, all those types of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess we're going to have to agree to disagree. I just see that we're not going to go anywhere, because you're coming back to the same point of the RDD argument, which is the relative density disequilibrium. That is the technical term. You may want to familiarize yourself with that argument. And the other thing is called the incoherent dielectric acceleration, right? Both of which actually are stating that there is a gravitas, because you are stationary. You are stationary. Thus, objects have to fall to the ground. In order for objects to fall to the ground, whether it's density, due to density, or due to some kind of static electricity, which is a fancy way of, another way to say the incoherent dielectric acceleration. both are accelerating to the ground. They admit that there's an acceleration to the ground. So in order for acceleration to be tenable, you can't have simple accelerometers like the water in the water bottle not displaced in those conditions, because that is quote unquote special pleading. But then you say that it's okay to have that special pleading, which I don't agree. I don't think it one should have a special pleading just because it's going downwards. In any direction, it works in a particular way. Why is it changing in downward? Because only the upward vector can explain that away. Because the we are constantly in motion upwards, and thus when the objects are dropped, it has losing acceleration or losing that momentum, and that's why the water bottle remains at the bottom of this water bottle. While it appears to be falling, it is merely decelerating. So, anything else that you want to talk about before we call it a day,
No,
Jason?
we can wrap it up soon here. I want to give you like a gotcha type question, see if you've got a
Sure.
response for it. All right.
Go for it. Yeah.
All right. So, what do you think is more likely? That Earth has assembled itself one atom at a time as it's been rising through space? Or do you think the pressurized pizza dome was built stationary with everything floating and then put into motion to make the heavier things go down?
Oh boy, this is a kind of a false dichotomy question in the way I look at it. You know.
What's the false dichotomy about it? Or give me the third option. Give me the third option.
Well, I think it's creation. I think God created everything in my mind, and then God created everything as it is.
While it was moving, was he like trying to keep up with it as it's like going away from him, where he's just trying to put another brick on, another brick on?
I'm not going to claim what God can and cannot do.
All right, all right. Well, there's so fun thought experiment, right?
Yep.
And we got through it pretty well. We didn't start yelling and losing control with each other, right?
I wasn't going to do that. I mean, I don't know why you expected that I would start yelling at you. Have you seen me yell at people?
You've been getting a little boisterous with people that are going against your upward vector. You tell them people.
Well, yeah. I mean, like I think people who are who have bad faith, and like when people have bad faith and they're deliberately trying to misrepresent the upward vector, yeah, like I have to call that out for what it is. But if people are genuine in their approach and just consider, what people are saying about it, like including myself, then I don't get uppity on it, right?
All right. Yeah. Well, I'm glad we were able to have this call. I thought it went well. Hope you did
Okay,
too.
good. I did, and I do look forward to speaking with Ronnie in the coming days. We'll set something up. I do have a kind of a schedule. I do have work and things that I am responsible for. I'm not living in the Himalayas now. I got short hair, you can see, but I am
I
still
don't think
very.
you should have cut it myself, but that's just my opinion.
Well, okay, well, I appreciate it is what it is. It's gone anyway. So, but thank you very much for your time, Jason. I think we probably have more in agreement with each other about stuff than we have disagreements with each other. And I do kind of like the idea that we're both from Ripon. I think that's really, really weird and fascinating. Because like you and I both know that Ripon is a small, dinky town in a
Mm.
lower part of Wisconsin, and but a lot of strangeness obviously been happening. Lot of connections I have with Ripon for whatever reason, and I guess I do look forward to talking with Ronnie about his experience, regarding the deception that he has encountered with various different characters. I definitely do want to call people out as far as I see them, but I'm kind of being strategic in the way in which I approach it, because I don't want to be battling in multiple fronts. Let's just put it that way. Okay.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's kind of the way I look at it. And I'm my own man. I'm my own channel. I got a small little channel. You guys have more subs. Everybody's bigger than me. I'm just trying to find my way in this YouTube verse, and and stick to the truth as far as I know it, and then whatever.
Yeah.
Let the
Views
cards fall where they may.
views and sub counts aren't a measure of truth, right?
No, it's not. We
Mm.
can both agree with that, and but having relevance is important. Whether people agree with you or not agree with you, at least they care enough to listen to what you have to say is important, don't you think?
Absolutely. All right. Well, it's been great. Let's wrap it up. And
Yep.
till next time, right?
Yep. All right. You take care.
All
Bye.
right. Bye bye.